Good morning, and welcome to our town workshop this morning, May the 15th, and appreciate everybody that's listening in, and appreciate the ones that are here, which we can't have many, but we got a few here with us today, all the councils here and our town staff. So we invite you, we thank you and ask you to Buddy Fowler, if he'll lead us in a word of prayer.
Thank you, Mayor. We're glad to bow our heads. Father, we come to you this morning with a humble heart and need. So we ask you to continue to be with us, guide us, and lead us. Father, lift up all those in the community and all those around the world who is dealing with this pandemic. Father, we ask you to continue to be with our soldiers as they're overseas and those that are in the States as well. Father, those that have lost loved ones, be with them and their family, lift them up. Father, we ask you to be with us today as we move forward in town business. Help us, guide us to make the best decisions we can for our town. We ask all these things in your most precious name. Amen.
Amen. Good morning. And ask Don Helms if he'll lead us in our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll turn it over to our town manager to introduce Monteith.
I need approval of the agenda real quick.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I didn't know. I missed that. Okay, do we have approval on the agenda?
I make a motion we approve the
Second.
amendment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Mr. Mayor, I want to add to the agenda. I make a motion that we add a closed session to the agenda at the end of the meeting pursuant to North Carolina Statute 143-118.11, parentheses A, parentheses 5.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, now, Kyle, sorry.
All right, good morning, Mr. Mayor. As we'll try to have for each of our work sessions, third Friday of the month, our town hall contractor, which is Monteith, and Mike Doyle, who's been leading the program, he's going to give us an update, let you know where we're at with bid packaging and timing and things of that nature. So, Mike, if you're on there, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Looks like we had a good meeting this week just to finalize a couple details with the town over at the community center. So there's a couple things that are, running right where we're supposed to be. A couple things that we've just kind of worked through the queue. We're having to wait a little bit just to make some informed decisions. But the good news is that the bid packages for the site work went out. So they are 2 subcontractors for bidding, and those bids are due on the 28th at 2 p.m. We'll get another package from the architect and structural engineer this Friday, and we plan to have those out on the street for bidding. That is the structural package, which will be your concrete, your masonry, wood framing, roofing, windows. So those should be out on the street by the following Tuesday, so the 19th. And those bids will be due back on the 9th of June. All that being said, that supports our mobilization on site the week of the 20th. So you'll start to see some fencing and silt fence and activity happening on site that week. And then we are still on schedule based on just some minor tweaks for a substantial completion at the end of April of 2021. And that is all I had for an update today, if there's any questions.
Anybody got a question for him? So we still on schedule now, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
You don't perceive any complications with these contractors as far as getting the contract in, the bids in, and us moving on, and you don't foresee any, what's the correct word, amendments or whatever to the contract to where there's not any problems as far as finances, as far as adding a bunch of work to it?
No, so we've worked really close with the design team to make sure the details are flushed out and understood. We find ourselves in, actually, with everything happening in COVID, it's kind of hard to say that we're in a pretty good position. But there's a lot of folks out there that are looking for work, and we have already started to see in the market that there's some competitive numbers that are coming in. So we think that is going to actually help the bottom dollar for the project itself.
This is Dwight Torres. So at what point do you think we're going to have a final estimate based on that same question? Just to see if we're going to be, my concern is to be on budget or under budget, preferably.
Yes, sir. So when we met with the team this week, so we will have the majority of the trades flushed through toward the middle of June. That's when all the structural numbers come back in. And then there's that final package that'll be the kind of finishes that'll be about 30 days behind that. So by the middle of July, we'll have 100% on the budget.
Thank you.
Anybody else got anything else?
No, thank you for all your work.
No problem. We appreciate it.
We appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Next up is request purchase. That's yours. You got that, Kyle, or you?
Oh, yeah, I'm
that,
sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. Just trying to close up my Zoom real quick. So the town was essentially presented with interest to purchase an unbuildable lot. Stephanie has put this information within your packet. The offer is coming in from Mr. Derek Arthur. And it is across the street basically from 2817 and 2819 South Shore Drive. At this time, his offer is $1,000. This offer is below what the tax value is of the property. The most recent value is approximately $8,170. So in order to move forward, council would have to either approve the offer and then we would advertise a potential upset bid for it.
So this was advertised?
No, not yet.
No.
Council would have to make a decision as if this is something you even want to entertain. And if you do, then we would go through the upset bid process and advertise, etc.
How many of these lots do we have that we do not need for beach nourishment?
I do not know that answer.
We have to collect that information.
Are we sure we're not going, anytime down the road, going to need this lot?
I couldn't confidently tell you for sure that we would not need it. And, I would potentially recommend that we get through finalization of our final project to do an inventory of our property to determine if we're in a position to sell or declare surplus.
I think we need
I
to
think we
do
need to
that.
just table this until later on, after we get through with our beach renourishment. I think we need to table it till we get through with our beach renourishment and
Yeah.
go back and look at it and see what we got.
And then too, what is going to be the value of this lot after the beach renourishment?
Yeah, that's also a question I don't think I can answer. As you know, the dune profile will be substantially different, and the look of the beach, and this may add it back into a buildable lot
Right.
per se. So,
I mean,
certainly
this-
respect the offer from Mr. Arthur, and it's just at this time I think there is a lot of unknowns that
Right.
we would need to get answered.
If not, we're going to end up bombarded with people wanting to buy all these oceanfront lots. So I think deny this at the present time. Is that right, folks? Do I have a motion
Yes,
to?
I make a motion that we table this,
Do we want to table it or do we want to
deny.
deny it?
I second.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we'll take this as guidance for any additional requests for property acquisition.
Right, I think we
Communicate
need
that
to hold
to
off.
citizens or any interested parties.
Okay. All right, are you handling the Crutchfield Code Enforcement Officer?
I will be happy to. There's a report that was provided in your packet in regards to a issue that was addressed or attempted to be addressed in December of 2019. Essentially, there's a property owner at 105 Crutchfield Avenue has laid concrete curb and gutter within the town's right-of-way. An inspection was made, and at the time they were actually out there working, and a letter of violation or notice of violation went out to the property owner. In regards to the current town ordinance, this board, the council has to make a determination of violation and then go back and direct code enforcement to take the violation measure to the next step, essentially. So this is before you. I believe there's photos within your packet. On page 7 that shows the work. I think that's been evidenced. So staff would respectfully request council direction in regards to moving forward enforcement actions and requiring the removal of this object within the right-of-way.
Well, so did they continue working after?
I believe so. The current state of it, certainly there's been concrete poured, and that's evidence within that final. The form was still up, but I'm quite certain that the actual concrete chatted.
So we got a report originally that it was.
Oh, I didn't see you over there. I'm sorry.
So it just, we got a report from a neighbor that it had started, and by the time we got there, they were probably 3/4 of the way, so we stopped them immediately. And Boone was the one that went over and had it halted. So, and I had a conversation with the property owner. So that was kind of where we're at. We told them to stay tuned.
Did he say why he was doing this?
He said he was doing it because his neighbor up at the top, closest to South Shore, had put blocks on the side of their yard and redirected stormwater. And he was doing the same thing because he didn't want stormwater to be in his yard, so he wanted it redirected, so that's why they were pouring it. And his neighbor was the one that complained because apparently now all the water is going to their yard.
Is the initial guy at the top in compliance with the ordinance? As far as what he's done with the...
He's not, I don't think he's technically in compliance because he's got stuff in the right of way. But he's the one that kind of started it.
That's what I mean. So if we correct the problem to begin with, that may solve it
Yeah.
from the top.
But the one at the head put blocks along the edge, right?
Yes,
To
sir.
redirect the water?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
All of them need to come in.
sound like to me the blocks were in compliance too, right?
Out of compliance.
They're out of compliance.
All right.
They need, all of them need to come into compliance.
That would solve the problem at the bottom.
Yeah, that may.
Yeah, and I think there's a bigger, I guess, issue in as far as enforcing that, and I think that's something that Kyle's working on now, and
I think we need to sit down and review that whole thing.
So before you, and I would say we probably just need to, but if we could focus on the Crutchfield issue, we will direct code enforcement to follow up and go through the proper channels. And if that's the desire of council, we'll move forward with that. The way the ordinance is written is that it has to come to you first to make this decision, and then code enforcement moves forward. Exactly.
That needs to be changed too.
Well, I think, I'd like to remind the council, my cohorts here, that several years ago, we made a decision before we ever hired a code enforcement officer, this was when Todd was here, to make sure that our people were not encroaching in the right of way. Those that had fences had to be removed. Those that had shrubs had to be removed. We had some that had a wall had to be removed. I don't think we need to go back on that. We need to enforce that and move forward, because if we let any of this slide, we're going to have a mess down the road, and it's going to continue to snowball on us. We need to stay with our ordinance that we've got, and I know some of y'all were not on the board at that time, but we made a decision because it was getting to be kind of bad, and we were asking Todd to start doing it, and he did start that process. I just think that we need to enforce our code that we've got. If they're in the right of way, they got to get it out of the right of way. And anytime anybody's doing anything like that, they should check with the town and know what the ordinances are. And I understand about stormwater runoff, but they can get together as a group there and decide how they want to do it, and do it uniformly, which will probably look better with the neighborhood anyway.
Yeah.
But I just think we need to stick with our ordinances.
I agree.
Okay, so we agree to go ahead and let him enforce that.
Okay.
But I don't remember us passing that every time they needed to do something, they had to come back to the board.
Yeah, looking at the ordinance, it essentially, let's see.
Kyle,
Removal
if
of
I may, I
obstructions.
finally made it
Council,
into
upon
those.
receipt of a report, which is what's been presented to you, that there are obstructions or encroachments upon any streets, wharves, or other public places in the town, shall consider such report, and if they find that such obstruction does exist and ought to be removed, shall give written notice to any person causing such obstruction. So procedurally, what we have here is that it's being identified probably through complaint or proactive enforcement. A report is generated. It has to come to council. Council then directs that a letter back to the property owner, which we'll draft and move forward with. So what I would recommend, and put together just a really brief plan of action, is the process is what I feel is going to be the sort of roadblock, no pun intended. But this is really an administrative function of code enforcement. So we'd like to amend the ordinance so that our current code enforcement officer can work cases, resolve cases, and if needed, provide a report on code enforcement activities to council so you know what's going on. There's not a whole lot in the ordinance that actually needs to be amended other than the procedural requirements to move forward with the enforcement action. So I put together a timeline here to have the review completed and back to you for consideration at your work session in June. And then the recommendations back based on direction in June in July, and then adoption August 4th, and then code enforcement would move forward in proactively enforcing the ordinance.
I believe the way it's written right now, I'm sorry, Doug.
Go ahead. No, you go
I
ahead.
believe the way it's written right now seems a little bit cumbersome.
Yeah.
And it should probably be streamlined and allow the code enforcement officer to do what he was hired to do. And if we could somehow make that a little bit easier on him and only bring to us maybe things that are just become to an extreme point that he's beyond, via the report that you've mentioned for us to consider. But I would make a motion to move forward with your recommendation.
Yeah, do you have a second? Okay, all in favor? Of course, you didn't really need a vote. But what was the date on this was the last time that it was?
I How long has this been
adopted?
going
When
on?
was this, when was that the last ordinance adopted on that?
From what I could tell,
Huh?
Hold on. 77?
yeah,
When?
1977.
Oh, that was before us, yeah.
What?
Way before us.
Some of us.
I know we went through this since then several times.
We went through it one time like Buddy was talking about, and we told Todd Rodemacher to correct these things.
See, 77 was before Rademacher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was,
I think there's another ordinance somewhere on this.
Okay, well, we will, as part of between now and June 20, June work session,
Yeah.
we'll try to compile that. Going back to what's published online is the current ordinance that you've seen before you. And then my understanding is that prior to the calendar new year, there was work done on it, and some recommendations were presented. I don't know if they're actually presented to council, but the draft has already been completed. So we would build upon those efforts and carry that through.
Okay, we'll do this, but I would love to have the records checked because I know that the crowd right here
Yeah.
voted on one
Okay.
since 77.
yeah, we voted on one because that's what we brought up in the council meeting.
Yeah.
To proceed on, because we were having a multitude of problems with people putting stuff in the right of way, and we just, at the council meeting, and Todd was there, we told him that we needed to get whatever was in the right of way to enforce it, get it out of the right of way, and he started, so I know we took it up at one of our council meetings, and I don't know what date it was. Do you, buddy?
Not really, speak up, please.
We spoke on it, I know since I've been on the board because, Price had spoke on having stuff in his utility right away. People had spoke up on, because they were continuing to plant shrubbery, which was, a hazardous condition, as well. And then just in the last month, we spoke about it, since we're on right-of-way ordinance, I'm just saying in our if we bring it up in our July meeting, talking about the parking in the right-of-way because of all the havoc that we saw over the beach access being closed, and why people, and a lot of people were actually going around their property and putting chains and just trying to protect their property because people were just driving up anywhere and everywhere they could. So I think on the center map of town, we're at Roland. So if you were to go a block south and a block north, would put us at Kinston and Greenville or Greensboro. If we could still allow some type of right-of-way parking in this downtown area. And then the only other right-of-way parking would be the state right-of-way parking that we would need on South Shore Drive for our beach nourishment,
Yeah.
which that's a state road. These are private roads.
Well, since we hadn't got anything on the records, we could put all this in at the same time.
Doug, remember the reason we started all this with Todd? The legislature came out with a thing that said that if we we being the town, knowingly know of violations, and they hadn't been corrected in a certain period of time, they would become permanent and could not be corrected. That's what brought all this on.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
And we did that, and we told them to start making them, remove them, and get back. But our ordinance states you can't put anything in the right of way and permanently, and the parking wouldn't be permanent anyway. But I think we need to stick with our ordinance and do what we need to do, and those that's violated that needs to correct it.
Can this be added to that ordinance, Doug? We can add that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They can work on this at the same time. But, I mean, this should have come before us before now, because we've been talking about stuff in the right of way for a long time.
My first couple meetings, we talked about it.
Doug, we've been asking for updated ordinances to be clarified and bring it to town council so we can look at them. And those that's antiquated to get rid of, and those that needs to be updated, and we've yet to have that happen.
Right.
That's got to be priority.
And as we were going through becoming, I guess, in accordance with the state is changing too, and we've got to align the two, right?
Right,
yeah.
So it's a perfect opportunity.
We've been
Exactly.
asking for these codes to be updated for the
I don't
last
say too much.
3 years. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
At least
I'd say
3
minimum.
years that we
Yeah.
asked
So,
and requested these
what?
the code enforcement, the codes be updated. I know we did it at one time, because
Theirs, I think.
League.
league municipalities come in here, and we went through every one of the codes and updated them, and the ones that were obsolete, we did away with. And we need to, evidently, we need to go back and do it again. But it needs to get done quick.
Yeah, well, that's certainly good background information, and perhaps by June, I'll be able to compile a lot of this research that sounds like there was work done, and I'll present that back to you so that we all know where we're at with everything, and then
Okay.
we'll revise this quote-unquote plan of action for it to include right-of-way obstructions as well as parking allowances within town-owned right-of-ways. And from what I can understand is that we would look at disallowing right-of-way parking outside of the core central business
Tail
district.
cut, I think you get the tail, you're getting the tail end
Yes.
of the frustration.
Understand. It's all good. We'll put a plan of action together, and we will bring that back to you next month.
Okay, cool.
So
Okay.
what did we decide to do on Crutchfield right now?
There was a motion and a second to move forward with
To
it.
go ahead.
So through that action, I will direct code enforcement to follow up and get that issue rectified, and any other issues on Crutchfield we'll address and try to bring those forward.
Okay. Got everything on this? All right, next we have a request to amend the 2020 minute calendar for Tuesday, June the 2nd to 10 a.m. from 6:30 p.m. The meeting will be held remotely via Zoom on youtube.com/Town of Surf City.
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, I guess it passes. All righty.
So, Doug, can I ask a question you got?
Do what?
So we're not going to do council meetings like this, correct? We want to do Zoom council meetings, that's that
I
correct?
guess so, yeah.
Is there a reason we can't do this for council meeting?
You can, but it's still gonna be hosted by Zoom because you're still under the
Yeah.
restrictions of crowd sizes. Well, right now you are, you may not be at
Yeah,
that
we
time.
can Zoom it from here like this.
Can we Zoom it from here?
Yes.
Yeah,
So this is
but-
a Zoom meeting as well, it's just
Okay, so we're
you're
gonna
all
do, we're gonna do it.
We're gonna do it here.
Yeah, but we're not gonna have it in the gym or something where.
Okay, that's fine. We're
Right.
meeting.
Yeah, right, we're gonna be,
That's all I want.
yeah, okay. All right. Okey-doke. Budget discussion. Let's see, can we read this better?
I'll tell you what,
Hey, this is better though. I got to give it to you. This is better than this.
We ain't giving you a whole lot of slack.
No,
It
it's-
still needs to be.
It's baby steps, and I'll pull up the actual spreadsheet on the screen.
Well, this is good. I mean, I can read
If
it.
that helps you go through. So what we're going to do today is just very briefly go through the departments, and then if you have questions on any of the line items through that, we'll document the questions and then get back to you on those so that we don't sit here and belabor
Right.
our meeting process. We'll be here until that June June council meetings.
Right.
So what we're just going to go ahead and start off. Let me try to change my view format, and really I can zoom this in pretty tight for your viewing pleasure here. And again, I just wanted to reiterate appreciation for staff for getting all of this information in a digestible format, and getting
Make that a little bit larger.
Yes, sir.
Probably easier to look at it. Don't you think,
So
Teresa?
just going through, we'll start with the general fund, the non-departmental. Ashley, if you can kind of just explain very briefly what this first non-departmental budget looks like and what this is for, please.
Sure. So within the non-departmental, it's pretty much transfers from the general fund to any other fund that we have. So what you'll see here highlighted, we've got capital. Well, first of all, we have a transfer to the town hall project of $10,000. Every year since I've been here, we've always put $10,000 into that project. Obviously, now, moving forward, we will have a lot more money going into that project, but from the general fund, it's just the routine $10,000 that we've had going in there. Capital reserve, in prior years, we've put $200,000 into that fund. However, this year, that $200,000 was diverted away from a transfer and placed into the fire department to fund a portion of the deposit for the purchase of the 2 fire trucks. Also, you have your transfer to the beach nourishment fund. After the sunset of the 10-cent tax that you all had going directly to the beach nourishment fund, you all chose to keep that 10-cent tax in place and to continue transferring those funds. But at the same time, if we needed additional monies to balance the general fund budget, then we could use some of that money to go towards that as well. So what you have here is roughly about 7.5 cents of the property taxes going into the beach nourishment fund. The remainder, 2.5 cents, is going or staying into the general fund to balance that budget. Contributions to Pender, Fire and EMS, the $72,000, that is the payments that are paid to them so that our Onslow County residents can have EMS service. EMS is stationed over here at the fire department on the island so that those residents up there can have that service. Onslow County does not have an EMS station anywhere close to our residents to serve them. Yes, sir?
What did we do? Where are we on getting that assigned to the people in Onslow County instead of the whole town?
So from my understanding, conversations were had with David Cotton before he left, and there was no movement on that whatsoever. How far it went with Onslow County in discussions amongst them, I'm not sure. But from my understanding, the conversations that Surf City had with David Cotton, that was a no, that it wasn't going to happen. Obviously, David's not there anymore. Conversations to my knowledge, have not taken place with Onslow County since the new county manager has come into place. So I would say that would probably still be something on the table to discuss.
Last thing I remember about that was that Onslow County was not going to pay it. Onslow County has no way of separating the fire and EMS. They lump all their stuff together as one thing, so they don't have a separate tax for all that, in which we do. But I thought that the residents had agreed at one time to try to assume that and pay that as well. That was one of the part of the discussions that I remember. How far that's gotten, I don't know. Evidently, it's not gotten anywhere. And I can see their point, because they're paying already, but they're paying Onslow. Onslow's not giving us back anything.
Correct.
So I'm talking about the whole municipality as a whole are paying for the streets to have EMS from Pender.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the way I understood it. And the last conversation, that was what it was, because the streets want Pender EMS handling it rather than Onslow because of the response time.
And the difficulties we had up there with getting the EMS service, but it was, I was at that meeting and they agreed that the people that were in that meeting, weren't you in that meeting along with Joey Rivenbark and Woody Sullivan? And they agreed they didn't have any problems paying the tax, whatever it was. But we can't legally do it for the simple reason they're paying taxes to Onslow. So we need to reach out to Onslow County and because either they need to reimburse the town or something needs to happen. It's not the fault of the people up there that are in the Onslow County, but it's not right for the town to pay for that service, and it's needed, and I don't want it to change because we had multitude of problems with Onslow EMS that I don't want to see anymore, and the service up there that they're getting from Pender is drastically better than it was before, and especially with the EMS and fire both responding on medical calls up there. So we need to take that subject back up with the new county manager.
I will, I've taken note of that and we'll get that process moving forward.
Going back to the beach renourishment, you said we had 7.5 cents.
Mm-hmm.
We already put 5 cents in, so we actually got 12.5 cents going into beach renourishment. Is that right?
No, sir. It's 7.5 cents. Of that 10 cents.
I thought we've
that was
always
going.
had 5% of the thing going in anyway. And then when we added the 10 cent, that went in as well. But now if that 10 cent, we've got 7.5%. If we add that to the 5% that we've always done every year from our thing, that would be 12.5%.
We have a portion of occupancy tax over $500,000 that goes into the beach nourishment fund. But to my knowledge, we haven't ever had 15 cent going into the beach nourishment fund. It's just been a 10 cent.
Well, never mind. I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
All right, the next departmental budget here is the governing board. Doesn't look like any recommendations for raises. I'm sorry, this year. So nothing has changed in this. If you have any questions, please let us know, and we'll look at that.
So you're saying we don't even get a COLA?
I'm just messing with you.
We'll give you a COLA on your uniform line item.
Yeah.
How about that? The 2% on the $600. So, but no, that one's pretty straightforward.
No, we're fine.
All right. Next one is administration. This is myself, Stephanie, Lydia, and then half of Jason's salary that goes into the administrative department. This is sort of, I guess we pulled some of this money out and put it back into finance, and you'll see that a little bit later. This takes care of contract for your town manager and the other items within that. There is some training items in here. Let's see, some conference funding.
Real quickly, I just want, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here because I'll say it one time only.
Okay.
I think that the whole council agrees with us and the mayor. I want to see a stop to any conferences, any trainings that are not required or mandatory
Yes.
at any department
Yes.
for the rest of the year.
Yes.
There's no.
Well, we can't do that
I
with
said,
fire
I
department.
said that are not mandatory.
Right. Because
Not
I
mandatory.
understand.
Something's in, I'm not saying
That's
that.
what he's saying. He's saying
Yep.
mandatory.
And we're gonna reach out to department heads to get them to reset their
No trips to California.
travel and
No trips
trade.
to, seriously.
Yep. Yep. Well, there's some contractual things, and then of course mandatory for
Yeah, and that's
certification.
fine. I mean, that's, you can't stop that process.
Sure. So that one's fairly straightforward. Not a whole lot of fluff in there. Be more than happy to try to answer any questions. As you can see, there's a lot of payment that goes to IT software that is basically all necessary for the town to operate its business. So that's the administrative budget.
Does that include your IT, I mean, the person that you want to bring on as part-time or whatever, to do those maps with
No.
water and?
No, that'll be within community development.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
GIS.
Okay, GIS, right.
But I believe the licensing for Esri is within the IT budget, so that's just the software that you run with GIS. Moving on to elections, this is just a line item. There's no funding that goes into this. It's probably just a legacy account.
Will be next year.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I see.
Whenever we have an
Okay.
election, that there's money budgeted.
Still learning things. So the finance budget, one thing that we did reach out is that we did identify we do have an increase in insurance costs. I believe that's at 8%. Is that right, Ashley? For employee insurance?
The employee insurance, we do not know yet. It's
Okay.
our general liability,
Okay.
all of that.
Very good.
Yeah.
So Ashley's put in, a projected amount for what's needed for that. The remainder, audit has to come out of this. Again, there's training funds in here that we'll reevaluate and bring back just a full number back to council to look at. You've got, phone bills, postage, printing, utility bills. And then dues for professional organization. So really not a whole lot in there. Certainly entertain any questions that council may have on that.
Can I ask how many employees are the salaries there?
4,
Four. Okay.
Yeah, Wendy, Donna,
Jeannie.
Ashley, and Jean. Yep. First room on the right. Moving on to emergency management. Working with James, you can see there's a few things in here. Training, of course. Again, we'll look at that. You've got communication through cell phone, a cradle point, which is your make sure you can get connected, and then iPad. That's really not a whole lot in this one. We have cut the vehicle, and then looking at the radio replacement. This was put into capital, I believe, to be able to communicate back with Pender as well as Topsail Beach in emergency events. That was a $60,000 project that will be carried over for 3 fiscal years, if I recall correctly. So that's the emergency management budget.
And then also the AM
Radio.
That's right. Yep.
They would communicate through AM.
Yeah.
Especially during the hurricane.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question? Did anyone investigate the cost of a re-entry pass?
Is that in here? Budgeted amounts?
I know that James was looking at some options, some cheaper, less labor-intensive options. instead of the key cards to stickers. I'm not exactly sure where he is on that. He did not mention that specifically as being included in his budget, but I mean, that's certainly something we can ask.
So go ahead.
We nixed that idea just due to COVID-19 and everything that we've been through. So instead of having to start the process over and the lab fees and everything that would go into doing the stickers, we're just printing more key cards in-house and moving forward with that at this time.
In the
Like
initial,
the little key card, but it's not assigned to an address? Does it have or does it have someone's name on it?
They all have an address written on them. Lots of them have the last name written on them as well, but they'll be tied back to the utility account. So the idea is now is that with IT's assistance, whenever they come in and sign up for a new utility account, they would be issued the key card at that time, and that key card would be tied back to the utility account.
Just a thought, today's technology, maybe there's a handful of folks that don't have a smartphone, but why couldn't we do something electronically where it would save money on the resources like paper cards, and I can just show you that.
Some type of app?
An app, or just say something that's sent to us that I can pull up as a photo and say,
Well, I mean, you could put
Dwight
it,
Torres,
you
my
could put it
address.
in there with your credit cards and all too.
What's that?
You could put it on your phone with your credit cards.
Yeah, something along that line.
yeah, we can look at it. Certainly the idea. I know that just going back to the decals, the quote that we had received was incorrect, and it was a lot more for the decals, and that's why the decision was made to stick with the key card.
What's the key card cost?
It was just barely over what the decal was, but the key card, we don't have to repurchase everything.
Yeah.
But we'll look into options for potentially next year, and I would see almost like a scanner, a QR code scanner.
Right.
But nonetheless, we can work that issue.
Just a thought, thanks.
That's what I'm saying. Then you could just have it on your phone.
Yeah.
Worry about keeping up with
Right.
Yep,
the card.
absolutely. I think it's a great idea.
Sure.
The insurance budget, again, this is, pretty straightforward. It's something we have to budget for, and there were increases that are put in there for potential claim figures.
Just for my knowledge, I'm going through and I'm writing the department heads on each one of these. These are broken down by department. Insurance, who's the lead on that?
That's going to be finance.
So the insurance that you see here, it's broken out not by department, it's just by fund. Yes, so you have a portion of your general liability and workers' comp premiums that are applied towards the general fund, and then you have a portion of that cost that's also applied to the water and sewer fund, so that there's allocation in both pots of money.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. Legal is your budgeted amount here, 40,000. I believe that's probably for contract.
That's probably any big increase on that. Is that because of the beach nourishment work that he's having to do?
My thought is that it's probably a mid-fiscal year budgeted amount for the
and to be
18,000.
honest with you, I don't know what that number's gonna come in at, because currently Brian's working for free.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this.
So,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, we haven't paid him anything, and he realizes that, and he realizes that he still has to invoice us, and the importance of invoicing us for budgetary purposes. But as long as he wants to work for free, I'm all for it. But that's not the reality. Yeah, no. No. So, not knowing exactly what that's going to cost is a little troublesome, but that's a pretty close number. But in comparison to what we were paying Lanier, there's a big difference because the workload is just completely different.
I figured that one thing, it's probably be a lot more because of the beach nourishment project he's having to do. And also he's working with another attorney in Jacksonville, right?
For the title search.
So, I mean, I guess he'll bill us for that attorney's work.
Yeah, and we'd probably pay that out of beach nourishment to
Yes.
keep it in line with that budget,
Okay.
because those costs specifically for the easement and legal work will be credited back to the overall liability on the federal project.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, any work he does beach nourishment related would come out of that fund.
Okay, all right, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Public Works Building, this one essentially is just for the actual Public Works facility out there that utilities works out of. There's no real adjustments. We had a reduction in maintenance and repair of the building by $2,000. Outside of that, that's about where it is. I would foresee this line item moving into the facilities and grounds if we do move forward with that in next fiscal year. So that'll just kind of be absorbed into it.
All right.
Moving into facilities and grounds, I did ask Chad to be here just in case there are any questions, either on Parks and Rec or facilities and grounds. We did sort of ask the request for a new vehicle here, and then we do have lease payments for the tractor with a sweeper as opposed to purchasing that at $55,000, which was in your capital improvement plan, but our recommendation is that we purchase that with, lease that piece of equipment to keep sand off the beach. Yes, yes. And we're seeing
Bypass clean, right?
yeah, we're seeing increased concerns because of the lack of vegetation on the dune. So we get a lot of windblown sand now on the roads.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Just the other day, half of the road was covered just
Well, you
from
need a
a.
dozer down that way.
Well, and we're tearing up the roads that we just put in. So, Chad, council, if you want to hear from Chad on this, he's here to entertain your thoughtful and thought-provoking questions.
Here or up there?
I think it'd be a little more appropriate up there. Thank you.
So the sweeper honestly is mainly for the sand, because the street sweeper that we've got will not allow us to do any kind of sand. If we run across the amount of sand that we've got up on the north end and what's accumulating in some of the areas, it's got a really small hopper, and I've said this before, the sweeper that was purchased for this department is really, when you talk to other street departments and other street contractors, it's for a parking lot. It's not for streets. It's for a parking lot. It's a little 8-foot. It doesn't pick up.
I agree with that. I'm asking about the new sweeper.
Yep. So the new sweeper is not going to. It's not picking stuff up. It is mainly to push sand off of the road. It is not going to pick rocks and things like that off of the road. It's going to toss it to the side of the road. So our other option is to do a full-blown street sweeper for those items to do that, and that we're looking at a lot more cost. I'd prefer to try to see if we can use this option to get the sand off, because the current street sweeper we got will not do anything like the sand of that capacity.
That sweeper was purchased to just do the sidewalk. Is what we purchased that for, is for the sidewalks. It was not for the street.
Yeah, so that runs us into which direction that we really want to go, because if you get a street sweeper that has the brush and cleans and throws water, you're not going to be able to get the sand off. So we have to have something that will get the sand off. Once we get some vegetation and everything established where the sand's not blowing back on, because those guys are going up there with the tractor and getting it off of the road, and then overnight.
Is that working?
It worked until the next night where it happens again.
No, I got it, but it's temporary, so.
Yeah, and we're putting blades on that new road, which is my main concern. So every time that we run across that new road with a blade, and we're beating it down. So we prefer to be able to sweep it off with one of those rotary, which is what, if you saw what a lot of when the contractors were cleaning up debris after the hurricane, they came through and they had the little machine that has the rotary brush on it, and they were just pushing it off to the side. At least when we push it off to the side, we can then either scoop it with the tractor, and I've talked with Jason Dale, this is what we did with the street project, and we're allowed to put the sand back on the dune.
Right.
But that's the only option that I've got right now.
So
And
the older one that was initially intended to do sidewalks, but I think I've seen it on the road myself over the years. What's the life expectancy on that? How old is it?
I'm not sure when that was purchased. Somebody will have to.
We bought it used.
It's probably,
So bought it used and it's been around a while, right?
it's been around a while.
It's been around at least
10 years.
since, well, we purchased that when Mike Moore was the manager.
Right.
So it's been 10 years,
That was 2012 when the
yeah.
So the reason I'm asking if it's coming around, I don't know what the maintenance has been on it, if any, but it's probably coming around to its shelf life. Whatever you do next should be able to do both. I
Yeah,
know the additional cost, but if we're going from 2 machines to 1, just as a thought,
Yeah, I
have
don't
we done
know.
the price, comparison between maintaining 2
Right.
and going to 1 that's a better option?
Yeah.
I don't know if that
You
exists.
won't be able to use this sweeper cleaning the bike paths on the road.
No, we have something separate for, well, you'll be able to use it for that. You will be able to sweep anything off, but what I want you to understand is the main goal for this one is to be able to get and control the sand that's coming up onto the road. We don't have anything without using a tractor to blade that off. If you get a street sweeper is not gonna be able to control.
I agree with you on that.
So we've got, I don't know, to answer Mr. Torres's question, I don't know that anything exists that will do both, that will pick up sand, and I don't know that we want to get into the practice of removing sand. We
Because
prefer-
I think it's a vacuum truck.
Yeah.
Not a sweeper per se. We're talking like an actual vacuum. that's
Yes,
going.
so we can do that and use that brush, but it's going to push the stuff off to the side of the road. So eventually you're gonna start to see stuff accumulate, and you may have people that complain that we're pushing stuff into the driveway. So that you gotta have kind of equipment for both. So what my anticipation was, I wanted to get this one piece in, see how well we can control some of the areas that we can't with the street sweeper we got, and then maybe look next year and say, hey, we've done a year, we've had this piece of equipment, we've got a street sweeper, where are we at? I didn't want to just throw in another street sweeper in here on top of another one with a brush, and now we're buying equipment we may or may not need.
So if I understand it, go ahead. Mayor.
I would still love to see us take this street sweeper, since you're gonna get it anyway, and use it on the bike paths as well.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the biggest problem with the bike paths is people's gravel is washing down into the street. So if we brush their gravel back up in their drive, then I can't see where they'll be fussing.
Yeah.
And I know there's probably some other trash there, but they need to pick the trash up anyway, so.
So where is this cost on, what line item is this on his?
So within the capital outlay line, within facilities and grounds, it
Right
was
down at the
originally
bottom.
in there and taken out, and lease payments were placed into the loan payment principal line.
It's in a yellow,
Oh, I got you.
loan payment principal.
And if we
That's
do
what it
lease
is.
it, that'll help us evaluate the progress and effectiveness of that sweeper. If it's not doing the job we want it to, we can give it
Lease
back.
an option.
That lease price is in red off to the side, and is that
Yes, sir.
annual?
It should be. I
Yes.
think
Yes.
it would probably be a good thing for this, and I think this was actually.
What's better, to test it out, right?
Lease,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where are we gonna locate this?
Through our current vendor,
But
No.
Like, where you gonna store
Out
it?
at the, probably out at the,
It's gotta be out there, because if you leave it on this island, it's gonna
Oh,
rust
I
down.
It will not be on this island.
Okay.
They'll have
I
to-
see what you're saying.
It'll
Once
either
they
be-
get through with it, they need to take it off the island.
That's right, yeah, that's right, yes.
either the
I
community
don't even know where
center.
we're getting it from. but
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
There's plenty of room out of community center for it.
But, and
That's
we
what
can
we're-
talk to price too, and it may be better for that type of equipment to find a bay,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
we're talking about roughly $1,000 a month to lease this vehicle, the sweeper, and see what we need to do. That gives us a year to see what has happened, how it's working, and what we really need to do the following year.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's good.
So I'm for that.
Yes,
And it might, getting debris off might prolong some surfacing on our roads too, so.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other questions on facilities and grounds?
Not me, no, thanks.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about the facilities and grounds director.
Yes.
So there's several variables there. If anybody wants to highlight on this, can help me on this, but so you'd like this to be a new position.
Correct.
Correct. So are we going to take somebody internally, move them up and increase their salary so we don't, or are you looking to take and put a $65,000 new position there in this time right now? So I guess that's what I'm looking to find out.
Yeah, so obviously when this was all presented was before any of it, any of what we're currently in. So I anticipated advertising for the position, and that's open for internal or external candidates. If it were, if an internal candidate were to get the job, then we would fill that
Who is in
position.
grounds?
That would come back in. The alternative is that we hold off on this for another year, reevaluate next year, and make that move next fiscal year. I'm not gonna.
Right, so my question is this, in lieu of either holding off or not, is it possible, I guess the question, I'm looking for some input from y'all. Does the council want to hold off on that for 1 year because we'd rather direct our funds to other things? Or
Sure.
do you want to move somebody up, give them a pay increase, and then fill that lower position later, is the question, you know what I'm saying? Or just delete a position? I'm just trying to figure out budget right now, okay?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's, things have changed since we first talked about this.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what you think.
So
Yeah.
this is a reorg, right?
Yes,
This
Yes.
reorganization has created one more position.
that's correct.
And the lower position is filled now, right? Based on the way
We're fully staffed within the current organizational structure,
So
yes.
if we reorg and you get this director, it leaves a gap somewhere?
If it was filled internally, yes.
Would we not be better off to hold off on this?
We certainly can. Again,
Till next year, when we get, everything gets back to normal and we're in better financial shape and we can do this reorganization then, look at it, go over it in one of our workshops and do it then. I think it would be more appropriate to do it
Kyle,
next year.
Councilman Thom had a great idea. He said we could make an interim position, move somebody up temporarily, increase that salary a little bit until you're ready to put somebody in that position, to post that job.
sure.
They'd be acting,
Huh?
acting.
They'd be acting
So-
with a
That
little-
would be fine too.
I would make, my recommendation, and Ashley, you can reel me back in if you need to, is let's get through this. Let's continue how we're operating. And then midway through the fiscal year, once we've been able to look at our revenues, that we don't know what sales revenues are gonna look like for April, May, June, I can bring this back to you to reevaluate. I'm not gonna, certainly am not going to belabor this request. In reviewing the organizational structure of the town, this was a recommendation that we could move towards because we're growing, and this would help sort of delineate some of the duties that fall under facilities and grounds. And as we add new town hall building, potentially new park elements, I think you'll want to see this in the future.
Yeah,
So
the
again,
reorganization makes absolute sense, it's just the timing.
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, this is why we have these discussions. So I'm completely okay with that. I'm not.
Can I get Chad's opinion just as far as like, if you still had it under parks or rec and parks/grounds facilities,
What's the question?
as far as his opinion is, if you have someone that is doing your streets now,
Yeah.
totally separate right now?
So the way that the streets work right now, all the guys kind of, if they have potholes and potholes are found, then they'll address potholes. The way that we address potholes it's not ideal because they're using the cold patching. But they all know how to cold patch. I think it would be best looking forward that they be able to learn how to do hot patching so that it'll be more permanent. That's outside of that. So that's what the street side does. When it comes to the contracts and managing the contracts, I manage the contract. So the job that we did up on the north end, that was a job that I put the RFP together working with Ashley. I met with the contractors, I stayed with the contractors. We had a lot of help from Amy Kimes, who's been very beneficial to us since she's been here. So that's kind of the street side. We don't have a traditional street department because we don't have the equipment to be a traditional street department, nor do we have the manpower to be a traditional street department. So we contract everything out.
Well, and I was going to add to looking at the pavement conditioning survey that I think that we definitely need to move forward with. That'll help justify and determine work for the next year and subsequent years if there are capital projects associated with it. And then we can start making decisions if it's worth our investment for hot patching, and then to take on streets in regards to an actual streets department. The way that we're looking at this, new subdivisions that come in and dedicating those streets to the town, we're going to have a pretty large or substantial liability in regards to maintenance and making sure we're doing that the most cost effective. So do I think we can get by another year? Absolutely. I think we'll be okay. And, Chad's guys, they all do a fantastic job, and I think that survey will help provide a little bit more guidance as far as prioritization of the work that
And
we're
we
doing.
also upgraded our specifications for these new developers.
Yes.
Whenever they do streets. Before, we didn't have the teeth in the proposals that these people worked under, where now we do. They have to do certain things, and we have to go out and test and approve it before we take these streets over. And the streets now will last longer than the other.
Absolutely.
The prior ones that we had, we took those in effect.
Yeah. And we're going to continue to build upon the requirements and having standard forms and certifications within the UDO project once we get there. And Amy will be extremely instrumental in trying to guide that. So.
Because that's what she did with the state.
Yeah.
So leaving things the way they are for right now.
Yeah.
Will save us $100,000 on that budget. On their budget.
Yes. Yeah. That'll salary and wages will essentially stay flat then.
I'm confident it'll probably be best for us, or I say best. What we're looking for is to go ahead and approve this position and not fill it until you come back to us and say this is what we need to start moving now. And that it may be a little different as far as the money goes, but at least it's in the budget, so when we get ready we can take care of the situation.
Yeah, that's actually, I don't know what your recommendation on that is, or if we just come back and do a budget ordinance amendment.
Well, it depends on what your end goal is today. If you have other things, as we progress through these departments, if you have other things that you think need to be added into this overall budget, then you should, and if these are one of the things as facilities and grounds director that you're kind of, teeter-totting on, then it's better to take it out so that you can add something else. If your end goal is to not add anything else, then sure, it's fine to leave it in there, not fill it, see if we need it or don't need it. The money just falls out at the end of the year because it's not spent.
Right.
So it depends on what your end goal is.
Well, I don't have a problem.
We're not about adding anything in, are we?
No,
We're not talking about taking this money and putting it on.
it's just, it's part of the budget for this year, and if we approve it and we don't use it, it'll fall out at the end of the year.
Right.
But if we approve it, later on in the year, we know we've got the funds already budgeted in there to take care of it.
Well, if we need that money to balance the budget, then we'll let you know.
Well, you can always do
Amendment.
Yeah, DOA to get it back in, and we'll work on it again. I think that I think we can probably make it through the year without it, especially with the circumstances. But if we can leave it in, we will, and then I'll bring it to you at a point in the future that we feel comfortable financially that you can then make that decision whether or not we go out and advertise for the position. But we'll just have to play, again, after these discussions, play with the numbers.
Right.
And then we'll bring it back to you. This isn't the end all be all of our
Yeah, if we were to
discussions.
remove those 8 employees and hire one more, how many people does that leave you to, like, do your, would he, I'm just asking, would Chad still do like the fields, or?
Yeah,
this would be under the fields and all would be under there.
under facilities and grounds. And as Chad and I have talked about extensively, I look to him to coordinate with this position to make sure the things that they've worked very hard over the last few years to bring the quality of our landscape of the entire town to assure that is consistent. But ultimately, the folks that would be doing the right-of-way maintenance and field maintenance outside of just the basic mowing would all fall under the grounds side of the facilities and grounds.
But you don't necessarily have to have someone that you're paying, because the more I've looked at it, the more I've had second thoughts about it. You don't need someone telling someone how they're going to cut their grass and pay them $100,000 when that guy's going to go back and consult Chad on what he should do next as far as Parks and Rec. Just.
What you're talking about, basically having 2 directors.
Yeah, so he's gonna go back to Chad and ask Chad what he wants him to do on the fields. So, Chad's got a nice salary, and then you're gonna pay another guy a really nice salary, and I'm just like,
Sure.
There's another $100,000 that probably could have been saved.
Sure. Well, then I'm not gonna. I don't think we need to really go through it too much more. So
Okay.
we'll be good. We'll be good to go.
Thank you, Jacob.
Okay.
Do I need to stay up for any of the other stuff here? Or?
If that's up to the council, do you want to skip over to the actual parks?
Yeah, community development.
While you're here, I guess, where's, let's see,
620, 10-6.
community development?
That's not him.
No, he would be on page 13 of 23 under Parks and Recreation.
I see it.
Okay.
And then you've got the Welcome Center and Recreation Tourism, and that's it.
That's all.
So Parks and Recreation is on
Parks and
13
Recreation.
of 23.
All right. How many we got, salary and wages, how many is that there? How many's in that department?
Ashley's probably got the number because I think some of it is, I'm not sure which ones are being taken out of there still.
Yeah, so Parks and Rec, there's 8 full-time. There's 2 part-time that are currently working and a 3rd part-time that needs to be filled or that's vacant. I know it's kind of changed
Yeah.
now with COVID, but outside of
They
that.
were filled, but I think one of them is now gonna be leaving when we
Yeah.
go back to part-time, but yes, you're
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, so it's 8 full-time and how many part-time?
Two.
then? 2.
And then 1 vacant part-time.
And then you got 1 vacant part-time,
Yeah, that's what you said, right?
or they're still working right now but leaving?
Well,
No,
no
it's-
part.
they're
Well,
not.
yeah,
We-
no part-time at the moment.
Yeah, we furloughed all of the
All the
part-time right now.
part-times.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, you furloughed all those, okay.
But-
They'll be going back.
But the
to work,
intent is 2 part-times, 3 part-times.
It's 3, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, 3.
though.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
I think it's 3, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Parks and Rec.
Okay. All right.
So there's pretty good description on most of this information. Certainly able to answer any questions that council has. Yes, sir.
So you have in here maintenance repair facilities here, and you have it back on facilities and grounds. You got the same 20,000.
So you've got town hall is, that facility and grounds includes your town hall facility. It's technically supposed to include,
all town
of the buildings.
Okay. So, but what I'm saying is you have it on facilities and grounds one also.
Yep, so community center is the only one that's operating on its own, as far as facilities and maintenance of facilities, because
So which one does that cover?
So in
that's
part,
covering the community center.
So it's 20,000 for maintenance repair a year just on the communities, maintenance repair on the community center, that's what you're saying?
that includes HVAC.
Okay,
HVAC,
Okay.
they've had a lot of issues because those things are so old, and that's at least $5 to $6 grand a
Okay.
pop.
Yep.
I mean, we've spent a crap ton on
okay,
that
fair enough.
building HVAC.
Well, these are helpful for us because
Yeah.
when we look, they,
But facilities and grounds, that maintenance and repair of facilities is all other town facilities, all other buildings that we own.
On the memorial bench expense, Chad, are we buying those and getting reimbursed for them?
So what I've been doing is, we try to keep one on hand, and then when somebody orders one, then we have it, so we present it, we order another one. So we try to stay at least one ahead. We've definitely, that's been a very successful program. We've got, I think, 3 due to go out right now. So it's actually, we're putting more than 5 out.
We're actually biting some of the expense on those, like on the one that we put in for Flag Day. Did we buy that, the town?
Yes, but that one came out of my facility and grounds.
Okay.
So it doesn't come out of the memorial bench. The memorial bench is anybody who decides they would like to purchase one, they
Okay.
come.
Okay.
So we take in that money there, and if the town, if we decide to replace a bench, then we take it out of our maintenance repair grounds.
And we have a specific revenue account that matches the expenditure. So that's one that typically offsets itself.
okay, got some other questions for you.
Okay.
Due to the virus, it says recreation program expenses. This seems to be higher than the last 3 years.
Where's that at?
Down in the middle says recreation program expenses, 66,000.
Yes, so
Okay.
we took over the Holly Ridge Summer Camp.
Okay,
So the majority of that is for summer camp expenses. So we had to increase summer camp expenses, and then when we bring in the revenue from Holly Ridge, that's an offsetting, actually it's more than offsetting all of those expenses. So that the revenue was actually increased as well as the expense.
okay. And
Yeah,
then,
so that Councilman Shugarts, that revenue then gets shown on the first tab of that spreadsheet that I provided
Okay,
the
got it.
other day. But yeah, a lot of these things with the expense for programming, we do see the revenue come back for it, which is the
okay,
positive.
and that's on the first sheet, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. And that would be the same for wellness, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it, all right.
Yeah, and my intent with is obviously to report back to this council as well as Holly Ridge with how that partnership went. So you'll be able to see that a little bit more in detail.
And then the last one's a disc golf course for 7,500. Can you give me an explanation on that if you don't mind?
Yep, so the disc golf course is, we have to replace signs and you have to replace the baskets. We're actually, the original intent was we had created a disc golf club, and we were going to be they were going to be doing tournaments and things like that, and we were going to have revenue coming in. So we wanted to be able to put back into the disc golf course if we were doing these tournaments. We did actually purchase 9 baskets to increase from 9 to 18, but we're kind of in hold right now, obviously with some other things going on. So.
What we're talking about probably is moving the
district. That's about accurate.
Yeah, because I didn't see any kind of from 18 or 19 on that.
Moving. Yeah, we didn't do anything on it because.
So you haven't done anything, so this is what you're going to need to do on it, right? Okay, got it.
Yep.
I was going to say, if we do $7,500 a year, it seems a little outrageous, but you haven't had anything.
Yeah, if we start bringing in the revenue side and it's budgeted from the expense side, if we start bringing that revenue in like we're planning to do, then you'll start seeing that line item get used. Okay.
Then last thing, I'm sorry, I had all these questions last night, I just want to make sure.
You're fine.
Back up to your training, is any of that mandatory? Or is it just for?
We've got some that have to maintain their certification, whether they have because I mean in our field we do have Parks and Recreation certified. You're like a professional, so you have to have certain CEUs to maintain that certification, and that certification is one that's very expensive if it elapses. So we do have some that have to have.
Do you foresee between training and travel, those two items? Do you foresee those to be able to go down this year with trying to tighten things up, or?
Yeah, because most of ours are they're local. We don't go out of state, so they're not expensive.
I mean, I hate asking it, right? Yeah. But I mean, with the times, I think everybody's got to. I just want to see what your thoughts are on that. Okay.
Well, we definitely plan to be consistent with whatever the expectations are with other departments.
All right, great. All right, that's all for me. Sorry to take the floor, everybody.
You're fine.
If we move the disc golf, if water and sewer, the water department ends up taking over disc golf, which I think has been discussed, the baskets can be moved to the new location.
That's correct. And the signs, and but obviously the signs will probably change because the course will change a little bit.
Awesome. All right, let's while we got Chad, we got tea time or something, don't you, today?
I wish.
We've got the Welcome Center, which is on page 15 of 23. And yeah, I think a lot of the expenses probably went into this fiscal year, this beautiful facility that we're in. But if there's any questions, certainly Chad can answer those.
I like two again.
You're running out.
Yeah, for sure. First one is I've always been this Welcome Centers. I've just been a big proponent of. I love it. However, I've always been concerned about spending and waste. So this had this advertising, tourism advertising and promotion. Can you break that down for me, if you don't mind?
Yes. So we do several different advertisements. Our State magazine. We've got some the new Topsail magazine. We do some advertising and promotion in some of the visitor centers throughout the state. We've tried to actually relook at some of the ones that we've been doing over the course of how many ever years. We did actually eliminate one or a couple of them and added, a couple as well. So we're trying to still get our name out there, but we're trying to figure out what is the best option at this time because times are changing. So when you're spending $5,000 a year to put it in a newspaper, I mean, how many people are looking at newspapers now? So we've got to try to shift that. So we kept that in there. Does that mean that we'll end up spending $20,000? If we don't have to, then we won't. We did reduce that because we had to shift some of the funds around because they had all this money into advertising and promotion, but there was no money in there for supplies to maintain the building. So we've had to kind of shift a little bit around. So we're still kind of, you got to keep in mind, with less than a year that our department's had this, and we're trying not to make drastic changes on the budget, but we're trying to do things that make more sense to us and how our operation has been so far.
And what is the tourism department doing connection-wise with promoting the community? You know, what connection does your girls here have with the community? You know what I'm saying? I know there's a chamber, and right? But what is the connection you guys have in that process?
So I've required actually two of the staff members that work out of here. You see now go to the chamber meetings to try to make that partnership because the town obviously has an investment with the chamber, so we want to make sure that everybody's working on the same page. So they have been working with them to make sure that the information is updated. There was a lot of information that was provided in here because everybody that comes to the town, they'd like to go by the chamber, but then we get the other half of them are coming here because they're coming to the main access.
Okay.
So they have conversation with people. They provide them documentation, or not documentation, but they provide them literature on what there is to do here in this area. It's a lot of the information that chamber is missing people. They're coming to us.
I'd like to see one of the things that you task them with is actually going door to door to businesses around here and saying, do you have a brochure that we could put in our welcome center? I want to introduce myself to you. We're at the Surf City Welcome Center for Tourism. Because as an example, and it's my fault, I didn't have my own brochure in here. It's my fault, but it would be a nice thing is if you could hit every little small business around here or larger business and ask them, do you have a brochure we can put in here? Because people do come in here. I think that'd be a nice connection from you with the city and the business owners of our community too.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's not a problem.
I'm tapped. Just ask them the questions I understand.
And they need to, I know we talked about business owners having some type of license, you know, doing some type of.
Yeah, registration.
He's got that.
So, you know, it's just not anyone that doesn't live or work here and have their business here that's gonna come out from the outside trying to bring in a brochure. It would be someone that actually has a business license in Surf City, correct?
Yes, correct.
Well, that's what he's working on. He's found a way we can do that.
Yeah, and that'll be, you know, not going back too far in our discussions, but I had wanted to review all ordinances in this upcoming fiscal year as part of a work plan, and that business registration, not licensing, would be part of that. And it's very nominal. It's not a tax per se, but yeah, we can implement that and then make sure that we are building that relationship. So.
Is it just an oversight for the line number for Welcome Center utilities that we went to 0? Is that, am I missing something?
They must have cut me pretty bad there.
Yeah, you had, so you only have paid $100 out of that this year, and nothing was budgeted for that.
Yeah.
Do you see where we're at then?
Yeah, I don't see what was used on it. Typically, the utility side, I don't ever really see. And
It looks like 1920, it was 10,000 and the actual was like 6,000.
It's an oversight.
Okay.
Or did they put it into, is it in another budget?
No, it's an oversight. We'll add money back in.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that.
And that'll be consistent with prior year appropriation. 2,500, I'm sure, actually would be sufficient.
Okay.
believe that's what it is. Whoever printed this, it's so small, it's hard for me to read it.
Yeah.
One more question, Chad.
Yes, sir.
Tourism supplies, it's at 17.5, where last year it was 1,000 and the actual expense was pretty close at $1,035. Why such a jump for supplies? 17,500 seems like an extreme.
Yep, so we shifted, we kept running into the issue where we didn't have a line item to pay for the things that you see in here when it comes to events. If we have to get we got to get linens and if we have a program, which our original intent when we took this over is we want to be able to utilize the facility more and rent it out more, but we had no funding, and it was all used up within less than a month because it was only a little over $1,000. So we shifted only for our events. I'm only talking about things that we're putting on and things that we do. So we wanted to make sure we had money in there. I don't know what that number is going to look like at the end of the day. So what we did was shift out some of the advertising and promotion because we've cut back on some of that. We shifted those funds into the supplies. So what I want to see is over the next year, what are we spending out of that? Can we reduce?
Advertising and promotion, which you just mentioned.
Yep.
You went from a budget of 10,000 to 20,000. You doubled that even though you only spent 9,000. And now you had a tourism supply budget last year of 1,000. You spent 1,035 again. So you were really close, I think, during a very demanding year because things were good pre-COVID. So it's really hard for me to understand the 17,500. Where do you see that as the demand? And how did you come to that number? Do you have an itemized list of things that you're looking to purchase? That's what I'm asking.
Yep. So again, where we got that from was we shifted that money from the advertising and promotion. We shifted a portion of it over to supplies. We were not sure exactly what we were going to need moving forward. We tried to hold the line on what the budget was on some of those line items. We shifted it around. If we don't end up needing that, we had to spend a lot of the money and the things that we had to do here out of the Parks and Recreation because we didn't have enough funding within the Welcome Center budget to even do anything. If we wanted to do programs to try to increase the revenue here, I can't spend that money out of Parks and Recreation to try to show where that revenue is being brought in and expenses. So we're trying to keep all the expense and the revenue in the same line item. I don't have the exact number. Again, we're less than, this will be my first actual year because last year I did not do this budget.
Okay.
So this is going to be my first year. So to answer your question, this is what my hopes are. This is my anticipation. I'm wanting to increase this, but we need some kind of funding and some money to be able to use if we're going to bring in revenue. We're going to have to spend some money.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're as tight as we can be on these budget requests. And really the Welcome Center compared to the others, as I've been crunching the numbers, stands out as pretty accurate as far as what they requested and what they spent. Mm-hmm. They last year spent 89% of what they requested. Mm-hmm. So it's a good number, be honest with you, compared to others that are at 40%, 50%, and I was going to save some of that till the end because I've got a question as it relates to the grand total of request and expenditure and actually expenses, and because I can't seem to find that anywhere, but I'm going department by department, and maybe I can do a grand total at the end, or you may be able to help me with that if it's somewhere and I'm missing it. But I mean, I'm not questioning you. Yeah. I just really that seemed like a dramatic increase. And we just need to be as tight as we can be.
So in short, what I'm trying to do is spread that money out. The money's being used, but trying to figure out where it's appropriate. Because if we buy office supplies, they don't need to be taking office supplies out of advertising and promotion, because then it's very difficult to track. So what I'm trying to do is start to spread that number out to figure out where it's appropriate so we can keep things consistent. That helps us with next year saying, hey, over the course of the year, we only spent $10,000 out of here, but we went over in this line item. So I need to shift some of that money out of supplies into this line item so that it's more budgeted. So it's right now it's a game of trying to figure out where everything needs to be shifted to.
I also wanted Ashley to point out, Ashley, can you point that out about the payment, if you don't mind, it's going to say something?
February of 2021, this facility will be paid off.
Yes.
So that's 102,000 plus more.
It's good news.
So next year, we won't have this.
Okay, thanks, Chad.
We're gonna open a new place up called Buddy and Dawn's Dance Hall.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Shag.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Do we have any more for Chad?
We're still siding this, what are we gonna do, re-side the building?
Yes, sir. So we're looking at, obviously the wood siding. I think most of you have probably seen there's a little bit of termite damage that exists. We've tried to bring people in to make sure that we don't have any issues. We've definitely ran into some issues going through the renovation with the restroom facility. So we're trying to just get the facility updated, and the siding right now is in such rough shape. We really need to go with something like a vinyl siding to where it's going to last.
You don't have to maintain as much. All you do is wash.
Yeah, but then it'll make it look a little better as well, and hopefully last a little bit longer.
Watch it go up.
We just don't have.
Is that on here?
I wasn't here when they decided that this was a good option to use, but
Yeah, which
the
line
wood
item
is
is
just starting to deteriorate.
Is that under your,
Is that-
maintenance and repair?
Where is that on this?
Yep. So that goes under
That's
maintenance
under-
and repair.
Maintenance and repair, okay.
And that was based on an estimate that you've received already?
That is.
Okay.
All right, and
20,000 is what the estimate was for the siding. That's to remove the siding, make the necessary repairs to all of the wood that's damaged across here. I don't know how much of that's going to be able to exist once they start putting vinyl siding. And then we've got vinyl siding on this side that at some point in past years was melted. I don't know if somebody set a grill out beside it. And then of course this side over here is, this is the only one that's in decent shape, but we can't figure out a way to match it because we don't have a clue. So it's little cost when you're talking about just this portion. So we went ahead and said, let's just do the whole thing.
That's the right thing.
And be done with it.
Okay.
All
right. And then need to resurface the parking lot, is that what this is for?
Yep, I did add that in there. And when you guys leave here, you can kind of see some of the issues with the parking area. The parking area definitely needs to be resurfaced. That is a quote that I received as well for resurfacing the parking. I'm gonna try to fill in some of the areas that the little landscape rock that we got there. I'd like it to be paved all the way to our bricks, the memorial bricks, and then I would like to be able to address some of the holes and cracking that we've got on this end is probably worse than this end.
Okay, and then the flooring, you talking about in that part
Yep.
in there, right?
So we'll finish up the flooring on that half of the building, and they'll pull that carpet up and they'll replace it with similar flooring. I'm anticipating it'll probably be this exact flooring.
Okay, all right. So what did you drop out of that? The AC, did you drop that out of that?
No, he's got $10,000 figured in the AC.
Yeah, so you got 10,000, you got 20, so that's,
That's 30.
yeah, I'm not
15,
sure where.
45 and
Did
7.
it get reduced? Because I thought I had it added up, and I may have put in there, because my original intent was a 40 or 12,000 for the parking lot, and I think they when they came and looked at it, I think they gave me 15,000. So
what I'm
there
saying,
may be
if
a
we,
hope, so.
if we add up these numbers right here, we come up to 52. 10, 30,
$10,000
45, and 7 is 52.
Yes, the 10 was dropped.
Huh?
The 10 was dropped.
10 was dropped,
We
okay.
will
All
rectify that.
right, well, that's what I
Oh,
figured.
so y'all, okay.
Hey, it's the number you requested.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, you don't get no HVAC cottage,
yeah.
basically. That's just, sorry.
Well, dang.
I think it just goes to give him a broom.
This is a,
Sweep
this,
off the floor.
yeah, this is a tough year, Chad, I'll tell you. Man. You make a mistake like that.
Hey, you just remember that when you have a meeting in here, and you're in here sweating.
We're gonna give them fans. Big
I will
fans.
say, Jeremy said that we don't need to use HVAC when he's in here, so just cut it out.
The real island feel to it. Okay, thank you, Chad.
Appreciate it.
But now, one thing, okay, you were talking about linen, you know, we furnishing linens and all. Now, that would go in, that would be added on to the price of renting the building, right?
Yeah, so my main focus is any events that we are doing, like our staff are starting to increase some of the things that we did. What we were planning to do a Easter brunch, and that was our event. So we've got to have money to be able to purchase linens for that event. So all of the events that we put on will have revenue coming in as well as any rentals.
Okay,
Now, if
so
somebody,
you'll have revenue to offset this increase
yes,
in all the
They're
stuff.
not using, it's for just our events, like, they don't use our linens for anything that anybody else comes and does. It. Like, if Jody and I are doing something here and it required linens, typically it would just come out of the council budget, even though it may be something that's Parks and Rec related. So now he'll be able to track it on his side instead of me taking it out of our stuff.
Out of my stuff?
Yeah.
Okay,
So the 17,500 for tourism supplies.
so we might get an increase.
yes.
We gotta come, we're moving $10,000 from somewhere for the utilities. Where are we taking that $10,000 from?
Well,
And this-
it's
That's
the
why we took bid away with
overall
AC.
fund and not that department specifically. So you've got the recreation tourism that probably has 10,000 that can probably move out of there easier than what the Welcome Center has. I will play with the numbers.
I was just gonna make a suggestion, you know,
Take it out of this.
the tourism supplies at 17.5, if you moved, last year we had $12,000 in actual utilities. So.
6.
6, so that would still leave you with $4,500 for linens or, you know, whatever else you
That
need.
leaves
to buy.
11, really.
Yeah.
Without knowing a number of what you're actually gonna spend. 11's better than 1, and we need to cover that utility from somewhere. So I think it's fair.
But if we don't put air conditioning in it, the utilities will be less.
That's true.
Yeah,
That'll wash itself out,
yeah, and like I
right?
said, this is still more of a work in progress to be able to see one full year of operation under a budget that I was able to put together for here to see where those numbers need to spread. It's definitely better than where we're at, but like I said, we've had to spend money out of Parks and Recreation line items because we didn't have it in the Welcome Center,
I got
so
it.
that's what we don't want to run into.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks, Chad.
Last one I believe is recreation tourism. Did we go over that?
That's Chad also?
Yep.
Yep, that's Chad also.
What page is that, please?
This
The
is,
full part-time
excuse me, this
staff, that
is
is,
16 of 23.
that's the beach, the guys that pick up trash on the beach and stuff like that.
Recreation and tourism.
Yeah, so you've got your part-time, they clean the restrooms on the beach. They're the summer help that help pick up trash.
Yeah.
They do all the weekend stuff
Right.
so we don't have our full-time staff working 60 hours a week.
They were the ones last weekend that picked up the trash from the dredging that they did down south, right?
We haven't hired them on yet.
Huh?
We haven't hired any part-time on
Oh, well,
yet.
that must have been your regular crew then, because they came by with a load of trash. What happened was when they did the dredging, it dug up a bunch of stuff, so a bunch of the stuff washed up on the beach.
Yeah,
And
they
were having to pick the boards and all that.
they do beach sweeps in the morning,
Yeah.
early in the morning, to make sure that there's not anything that's left out on the beach and that there's not any debris on the beach that could be dangerous. So that's typically their task as well as the full-time.
Right. Well, some of your regular guys did it too, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, they definitely work hard.
Yeah.
All right, anything specific you want to go over, Chad, with this budget?
I don't know that we changed a
Yeah, I don't.
whole lot in this one. Stephanie, this is one that Stephanie actually works out of too when we do 4th of July and the Christmas tree lighting. So
Is that still here?
That's still that's in that special project.
Okay, so I got a question though, maybe you can help me understand. So the last year's budget, the figures, I'm trying to get my head around, but it was 950,000, 140,000 roughly was actualized. And we're again asking for another 973. And there are some things in here such as beautification and appearance, where we asked for 10, spent 1,400. We're asking for 10 again. Mosquito control, we asked for 5,000, we spent 100, we're asking for 5,000 again. It's just that whole, seems like we're asking for a lot, but not executing it all.
so
The year-to-date expenditures that you're looking at, is that what you're seeing on your spreadsheet as current year-to-date expenditures?
I'm looking at the column where it said 1920 final budget, and then when it says actuals, I'm assuming that was the actual.
That's only through,
That was,
that's
yeah.
only through March.
So that was the actual at the time that this spreadsheet was created. So
okay.
those actuals have actually changed.
That makes sense.
So you still got 4 months to go.
Okay, gotcha.
And for the mosquito stuff, last year, we were lucky enough to get with a different company to change over chemicals. And so we were able to save a lot of money, but we had a lot of bad chemicals that still needed to be used. So probably about halfway through this budget year, or the upcoming budget year, there'll be a larger expense related to that, as we're lucky enough to get them to manufacture, but we didn't have to purchase anything at that time.
So at what point do we go, here's what we asked for last year, here's where we are today, what has not yet been obligated, so that we know at some point, are we gonna be under budget, over budget, when does that occur?
We won't know that until in July.
After it closes out?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to balance the budget today, not specifically today, but before the fiscal year starts. As we move through the current fiscal year, all of that is monitored as in, what was originally budgeted, what's been spent, and what's left over. And anything that's left over falls out at the end of the year, as long as your revenues, your expenditures have not exceeded your revenues. Any excess that you have falls out into fund balance, and that's what builds up your fund balance. So the theory is whatever numbers you use to balance your budget for next year, if they're similar to what you've budgeted for current year, then the same situation would happen, because you would not be spending more than what you've budgeted for. Does that make sense? I don't know if I did a good job explaining.
I would want to know if we're on track to be on budget or under, preferably. And if we think we're going to be over, we could forecast that, I would think, by department.
Yeah.
To say, here's what we have left as of today.
Well, and that's,
and I think obligation-wise, here's what I expect, right? Because it's going to be near term,
Right.
60, 90 days out. And then that way we know ahead of time, where do we think we're going to be? Do we
So,
do that?
a
Or do
part
we
of-
wait till surprise the end of the year and now we know where we're at?
No,
No.
we're looking at revenues, and that's what, when we are going through, what is our occupancy tax revenue, what's our sales tax revenue, what's our property tax revenue, the big things, to make sure we're still on track. If if we had major issues is where we'd have to start looking at what their budgeted amounts were and cut that off. And that's where a purchase order system comes into play too, where there's a checks and balance to where the request for a purchase is made, so that they're not just spending willy-nilly without the revenue to match.
Right. As a part of a department head's budget process, they have to do those projections. So, even if they saw numbers, say December, which is in the middle, of that fiscal year, they should be able to look at what they've spent thus far and be able to project out at June 30 how much they were going to spend. The theory is that they, when we did this process a year ago, they had planned out specifically what they were going to purchase with the monies that are allocated in that budget. The main purpose of a budget is not just to throw numbers out there, it's to allocate funds for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
So they should be able to project at whatever point they're in a current fiscal year, they should be able to project where their expenditures are going to be come June 30. They should know what projects they have left to do. They should know, based on expenditures up through December, that I've got another 6 months of these amounts and this is where I'm going to be, whether that's under budget or whether that's over budget. If it's over budget, well, then they now know with my other line items, I can't spend everything that's in that line item because that department as a whole cannot go over budget
Okay, thank you.
by statute.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions on? Yes, sir.
Question.
Okay.
Since we're in the streets and parks and back at the concourse, is it possible, I know you mentioned this before one time too, about a crosswalk over at Tiffany's? Remember you were somebody talking about a crosswalk
Well,
at
that's
Tiffany's?
something that he's dealing with the state on. Because we
Yeah,
gotta get state
so-
permit.
So this is a good question. The town had a bike and ped plan put together a couple years ago, which lists out priorities for us to accomplish. Crosswalks on 50 on North New River were not prioritized. Basically, our priority is infill of CBD and then strategic crosswalks within this area. Those are the immediate recommendations. So actually I had just emailed a citizen yesterday about this, but the town at any point can go back and look at that plan and add projects and prioritize. But what I would prefer to see is that we follow the plan with the implementation schedule, and that's where that 50,000 for sidewalk, I'm going to put that back onto Chad, and it's something we talked about yesterday, to come up with $50,000 worth of projects and get them done this year. And then if there's additional, which I think we would also like to see in future fiscal year, additional capital projects that we need to pull out of that plan and plan for and execute, then we need to do that as well. So we're playing a little bit of catch up on it, but again, that bike and ped plan sets the priorities, and we would like to be able to follow those. And if it is a priority, because sometimes those do change, that we need to focus on crosswalks, signalized crosswalks on 50, then we need to come back and fulfill the planning process. Got it. Get input and recommendations, and then amend that plan, and then do the work schedule.
Got it, thank you.
And I'll add something, when you start talking about that bike and ped plan, we have to keep in mind that even though we haven't been the front runners of putting a ton of the project together, we have really accomplished a lot of stuff on that just through the state project that's over here with the sidewalks down the center. So a lot of our funds we held off waiting and anticipating to see what the state, because we don't want to replicate what the state was planning to do, and we had to see how it was going to pan out. So it's really, we've knocked a large chunk of it out through the state and that.
Yeah, it's I guess it's a little near and dear to my heart, but that plan is actually pretty good. I'd recommend going back and looking at the maps tied to it, because it does break out the central business district into 3 different areas.
Understood.
And then has where the recommended new sidewalks should go. And if we're gonna budget 50,000 for new sidewalks and repair, we should be able to say, okay, well, we can accomplish 2,000 lineal feet of sidewalk this year. And then if it's the desire to be more aggressive on that plan, on the implementation schedule, then we can budget more money for it.
Did I say sidewalk or crosswalk?
Oh, I kind of
Crosswalk.
molded off.
I get it,
but
I get it though. I understand
yeah,
though, 100%.
sure.
I understand, I'm good.
10-4.
Yeah, appreciate it.
10-4. Happy to talk about that stuff anytime then.
Nope.
Okay,
All right.
let's see,
well,
that was recreation and tourism?
Yeah,
What were you
that's the one we were, I think, finishing up on. If there's any more questions, Chad, appreciate your time this morning, of course, and hit them long and straight.
Thank you, Chad.
As long as we don't have a hurricane, I'm good.
Jeez.
Oh, don't say that. Let me throw something.
All right, we're gonna go in reverse now and go back up to where we had left off.
That was right before the police.
Yeah.
Are we good on Powell bill? Is that, you already?
Oh, we didn't talk about Powellville.
That was short and sweet.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
I think we
Power
can-
bill is,
I need to go back up and I will.
now,
Okay.
Teresa did bring up, well, I think Teresa, yeah, several people brought up, you know, we're keep acquisitioning all these streets. And Power bill doesn't really give you enough money to keep these streets up.
No.
So, you know,
I was just asking why.
Huh?
Why I need to keep them.
Good
yeah.
question.
We're not required. We do make the developer, they need some type of responsibility
Standard specifications.
on them,
Yeah.
you know,
And
and
transfer
for,
it over
you know,
to
the
the
residents that
HOA.
buy into their subdivisions, then they know that there's an HOA to keep up their roads, and that burden is not put on the city.
Yeah, you do not have to accept roads. They can either be DOT or private, and the HOA then becomes responsible for the maintenance of that road. Yeah, that's a completely
We
a
still
policy
have, we still have our
decision.
utility right away.
Oh, yeah, all that has to be dedicated to the town for us to have access for emergency services, utilities, that kind of stuff.
So what's the benefit of taking them on?
Oh, that's a good question.
Very good question.
You know, it would be uniformity of road maintenance, but I can assure you that even with a new subdivision, at some point, if the HOA owns that and it becomes in disrepair, they're gonna come to you to ask you to fix it. It happens all the time across the state, and, you know, especially at the county, as they call and ask, well, who's gonna fix this road? And ultimately, it's either private or the state.
But I guess to the contrary, and excuse me.
No, you're okay.
If we were starting to set a precedence that we're going forward or not gonna take them over, then do we have say-so over the quality of the road?
Absolutely. In
We
new
do?
development, yes.
Okay.
You set the standards, in which roads need to be built, and you require certifications from professional engineers that says it meets that standard. The one thing I would say, that we would want to consider as a town is, what are the rules for private roads? So can somebody just block it off, or put up a gate? Because you also want to be strategic in having, actual connectivity in roadways and having from point A to point B. But a cul-de-sac in a new subdivision, you're gonna be hard pressed to get a lot of support out of me saying that that's something that we would benefit from. I'm not quite sure what the benefit would be other than having the ability to go back and provide a repair or maintenance for a citizen on that. Because again, it's a tough challenge for an HOA to keep up with that. there's a lot of powers and authorities with HOAs in this state. And then when a developer turns it over, stormwater and streets and all this other stuff, that liability goes to essentially a group of private citizens, and that's a tough thing to manage.
But right now, we're getting $90,000 for how many miles of streets? And what we did on J.H. Batts Road was only $60,000 that it cost us, which we thought we were getting a deal. At $60,000.
Absolutely.
So $90,000 compared to how many miles?
Yeah. It's pennies on the dollar of what it actually takes, and that's certainly a concern.
Which you can probably repair their streets every 100 years.
We wish. Yeah, not in this environment.
Have their homeowners association keep up with it. I know Allen Oaks Homeowners Association, they do an awesome job keeping up with their roads.
Absolutely. So some are going to do better than others. And that's the downfall.
As far as like Waterside, the terraces, the new development, what is it, Magnolia out there beside Water, or Saltwater Landing, have we agreed to take on their roads?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They've recorded a plat, and I'd have to go back. I don't want to misspeak on
That's usually something that happens after.
After you have residents.
Once it's complete.
And I think
Yes.
has been 100% dedicated.
I'm just talking about the ones that are, the new ones that are being built.
Yeah, I mean, it takes an action of council to actually accept the road.
Yeah, and that's normally after the development is 100% complete.
Or a certain percentage, like DOT won't take over a road until there's like 4 residences on it or something of that nature. But yeah, that's something I certainly would implore you to look at with new development regulations being put in place is a policy for the town to take over roads. And you might only take over our road in that division. Again, if we're talking about Waterside, maybe it's the road that connects Belt to 50. It's a longer stretch, but that might be something that there's a benefit for the town to make sure that stays open and it stays in, quality for emergency services. But again, that's a topic we can certainly bring up.
Okay.
Right now, that's a state road, right?
I don't know.
Bell
Road's a state road.
Uh-huh.
But having that connection between Belt and 50 would maybe be an important road for the town to consider. But everything else in that you would leave a private HOA would maintain it.
Okay, I think that's something we can look at.
Thanks.
You've talked enough.
I think we're back to the police, is that right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Got some sense in this way. Okay, so the police department, there's a lot of information. This is obviously one of the bigger budgets that we have within the town. I think, with that PowerPoint, public safety between police and fire is a majority of our funds. And we did hear from the chief the other day, talked about things like the K-9 investment and moving forward with that, personnel and some sort of workable solution for the desire to increase patrol officers for a multitude of reasons. So, we're more than happy to go through these things and look at it. Certainly would take direction from council, of course, on any of this information. The other thing was the contemplation of a civilian for the evidence intake and management of that process. So, yes, sir. Please do.
I would like to, I think I've talked to a couple other council, talked to the mayor. I'd like to move forward with no vehicles, no evidence tech this fiscal year. And I'd like to see them get 4 new officers, to one officer per shift. We're shorthanded. Voorhees knows we're shorthanded. We don't have enough for events that we need to do. And no SUV No beach SUV or any of that. And I'd like to just get that in the right direction. The evidence can be done by Sergeant Hartsfield, who's the administrative sergeant there for detective, and Chief Shannon can work that out. But if we're going to pay anybody, we need patrol right now if we're going to put any money out at all. So I'd like to move forward with that, and I want to know what we need to do to make that happen.
Show me the money.
Huh?
I disagree with that. I disagree with that because you've got I talked to the chief this morning. The chief said that if he needed personnel, he would have asked for it. He needs that civilian employee that's gonna do more than just do evidence. And being honest, Jeremy, you don't know what's going on at the police department. You've never been involved in law enforcement. The chief is in charge of that department. What he needs, he knows he needs. And for personnel, we don't have the money in the budget for 4 personnel.
Let me appreciate that, Don. And,
Please.
I appreciate it. Actually, with no vehicles, no evidence that you're talking $155,000, $160,000 he requested for vehicles and an evidence tech.
Okay.
That gets us started on the 4 officers. We're not doing fireworks. There's places you can start pulling that money from. And that is more critical for us. Right now, we're behind the curve. I think every officer agrees with that that's in the field. And I think you have enough counsel that we want to move forward with that.
That's still not enough to cover the
Disagree.
salaries.
Okay, wait a minute.
officers.
Still disagree
Wait,
Jeremy,
let
what's your
Ashley,
understanding? You can't ask these people to go out here and drive vehicles that potentially break down all the time. And vehicles are safety.
Don, do you want?
okay, how about Don, wait a minute. Ashley, if you got something you want to say, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, even if you take out the 4 vehicles, if you take out the vehicles and the civilian evidence tech, that's still not enough to cover the salaries. And you say we're not doing fireworks, but that's out of current year's budget. So for next year's budget, you've got next July 3rd's fireworks factored into
No,
that.
he's not talking about, you didn't mean
So-
to use the fireworks.
No, I didn't mean to use fireworks. I just said, no, and I said that there's things that we can do to move stuff around. My point behind it is, we're gonna pick up the SRO money eventually. There's gonna be things that we can help offset that. We have a complete shortage here. Our vehicle situation is not destitute at all. We're in a good situation with our vehicles, and I think making a concession for 1 year, every department is cutting out vehicles. I think making a concession this year puts us in a great situation. And the fact of the matter is that we are short manpower. That is the bottom line. Okay, and we don't have enough coverage in our city to get from 9th Street to the south part of the island to Dogwood Lakes with the amount of coverage we have on patrol. So I think if we can, I've done a lot of homework on this, I've spent a lot of time on this, and I'd like to figure out how to make this happen. And so that's why I'm talking to you, talking to the council, the mayor here, so that's what I'm wanting to do.
So,
What I'd love to see is for, Chad to lead, Kyle, excuse me, I'm looking at Chad and talking to Kyle. But anyway, Kyle to lead, maybe bring in, Shanahan, Voorhees, everyone who looks after the vehicles, and those people, bring them in, sit them down, and discuss all of this, and see what is the best route to take. I'm sure that there's probably 2 or 3 different routes we could go. But just bring them all in, and you all sit down and talk with them so that we don't get, different, in other words, y'all just do it. Y'all handle it.
Sure.
And then come back to the board with what solution that you find would be proper all the way around. In other words, you know, how many vehicles do we really need to replace? Do we need more officers? Which I think, you know, we feel like we need more officers, we feel like we need more vehicles, but let's find it, we can't do everything. So y'all decide what we can do at this time.
Well, and we talked about options, you know, following our last meeting of trying to figure out a solution for this.
Right.
And, you know, it can come in the way of many means, as you had mentioned, staggering the hiring of individuals. We know that, you know, if July 1 a budget gets adopted, July 2, we do not get new law enforcement.
Right, you won't have them that day. That's for sure.
And I think
we
that
probably
if-
won't even have the 2 slots filled by that day.
Yeah, well, and I know there's a recruitment issue and things of that nature. And if we can work towards a goal to, you know, to have a end sight of when we pick back up, because this summer we're not going to see the impact of this decision.
Right.
You know, to be able to stagger that at least puts a little bit of cushion for the blow on the budget. The vehicle thing, we'll have to really sit down and work out and figure that, you know, where we're going to be at. And we'll talk with the chief and understand that the evidence tech, that if that's something that we can defer until next year. But I also want him to be able to clearly communicate, you know, he had told us 3 hours a shift, you know, what that impact is of having a sworn officer in that evidence room, and we'll get some hours and numbers and all that other stuff.
I want to interrupt you.
Yep.
I do not want an evidence tech
Sure.
this fiscal
Understood.
year. Teresa? Dwight?
I think if he wanted an additional officer, or an evidence tech, that should be a sworn officer, because he could do both. That increases us by 1. As far as the vehicles, I'm on board with Jeremy. He's done due diligence on this particular subject. He's got some specifics, and I'd ask that you talk to him, because there's some vehicles that were purchased last year that weren't, and have yet to be delivered, but weren't put on this spreadsheet. There's a vehicle that is budgeted for this year that has yet to be purchased. So we're talking about not 29 vehicles, but possibly 31 vehicles for 21 officers. And I'm not even, I don't think that, and I could be wrong, you know, but that every police officer must have a vehicle individually take home every night. That should be revisited. There's other police departments that get a stipend to drive back and forth, fuel maintenance on their personal vehicle, and then there's a fleet of vehicles that can be shared. I don't know that whether the number's 31 or 29 for 21 officers makes sense.
Sure.
So I'm definitely for not buying new vehicles without looking at, do we have the right fleet to begin with, and are we, you know, using it the best we can? And if we're gonna have a police or a evidence tech, that it be a sworn officer, so that we could start increasing that population of police officers, because we do need more.
Sure. Well, and again, not to, I don't think we're going to solve this today.
No.
We will go back and sit down and evaluate additional information. I understand the direction of council, you know, pretty clear, and we'll see what we can do and bring it back to you. That's all I can basically tell you today.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think we're not going to settle this now.
No.
So you all just sit down, and like I say, what we say may not be exactly the right thing.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
So, but come back and bring it back to us. And
Sure. Well,
y'all, you know, get it together and then
Tom, I
present
just
it.
want to say one thing, Mr. Mayor, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And in reference to Dawn, and I have utmost respect for your background. My lack of, me not being a former police officer doesn't mean I have a lack of knowledge in that field. I've done some homework, I've done my research, so for me to even say these things, I've spent quite a bit of time studying and doing this. So I just want that respect in that aspect. That's all I'm asking for.
I'm not saying that you don't. I'm
That's
not
all.
saying that you didn't do it. but I'm
Okay.
just
That's all.
telling you-
I'm just saying that. I mean,
we're all,
We need to let Kyle.
right, that's what I say. We're all happy. We're gonna let
make
him.
a decision.
Okay.
And I'm in agreement with you. We got 21 officers, we've got 29 vehicles. I will tell you statistically, it has been proven that if they carry their car home, it helps the town because they look after it. Where you're switching cars, I went through that and it becomes a morale issue because one officer don't keep his car, the car he's using like the one coming on. And statistically, you save money by assigning a car to an individual, make him responsible for keeping up with the maintenance and the care, the washing, the cleaning, and everything else. It saves the town money in the long run.
Okay, all right.
Versus,
You handle it.
You got it.
Kyle?
Yep, yes,
That's
sir.
that's the reason you get paid more than we do.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right, what's next?
Thank you. Yes, sir. All right, going into fire department. Again, we heard from Mr. Wilson. That's fun to say. On Tuesday. So, we talked about the capital investments for the new fire truck, discussed the needs of that. Again, a lot of the stuff that they do is going to be state mandated, where they have to, for their training, to keep up their certifications. So if there's anything that's of major concern, please let us know and we'll look into that. But ultimately, there's a lot of things that stayed fairly consistent. And if they were increased, there's some justifications in there to sort of explain what those were for.
They have an estimate cost, because a lot of the fire trucks that I've just reviewed online, they're like $1 million a piece.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing where ours are only 600, and I'm like, so what kind of quality truck are we getting?
That's just for the chassis, the actual truck and chassis. So the second component to that will be the equipment upgrade. So it'll be the 1.3 for the two total.
For both of them.
For
It
both of
depends
them.
on what kind of truck too you're looking at online. Like a ladder truck itself is over $1 million.
It's $1 million.
But
Right now, if
an
we had to
engine-
purchase that same truck, we'd be looking at $1.4 million. Just for that one vehicle, but not for a pumper. They
This
get,
is a pumper.
this is a pump, this is two pumpers. First line pumpers, and they're not $1 million.
We are, yeah, by buying
We're
two
getting a
at
deal.
once, yeah, we are.
But I'm just asking, you've seen the layout and the invoices to make sure that everything as far as like an estimate from,
Yeah.
we've looked at estimates. We got some type of
mean-
estimate from
These
the,
actual prices from the company, right?
Yeah, so Alan's done that work. I personally haven't seen it, but I mean, it just in years past of me purchasing fire trucks for other places, I mean, it falls in line with everything else.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
under a
it's-
bid process. They have to specify, in the bid process, when you purchase a truck, every item on that truck is in that bid process. And it's written out, what we're getting, what they need, and everything else. And the two trucks they're in line, and they're quality trucks. We're not getting any junk that we have to worry about.
Yeah, I don't think there's that many manufacturers that build
Yeah,
them
what-
to begin
what
with. I only know of like
manufacturers?
two.
You've got E1,
So-
you've got Pierce, which we would never go with because they're outrageous. And we got Sufton. And I
Seagrave.
think they're looking at
E1.
E1 or
Seagrave?
Seagrave.
Yeah.
And they're looking at it, and they're in line with everything else. Pierce, what happens there, the purchase of the truck is fine, but whenever you go to doing maintenance on the truck, that's where they eat you alive, and it becomes that's the reason Pender EMS and Fire got away from Pierce and went with E1s, because the maintenance was astronomical on the vehicles.
Okay.
And that's basically some of the research that I got, because it said, the Pierce fire trucks, at this point, we've had nothing but problems as of lately. Don't let anyone stand in front of you and tell you that they're gonna last 20 to 25 years. So-
Well, fire trucks are just like anything else. You're gonna have maintenance on them. But they're extreme with theirs. You can't even fix a door and go somewhere and buy something. You've got to buy it from Pierce. That's the reason you got that from whoever you got it from, and they're telling you the truth. And that's why you go with Seagrave or E1, because there's a lot of items on those that you can buy locally or buy from a vendor that don't cost you an arm and a leg. So that's the reason. We don't even consider them.
Okay. Anything else on the fire department?
Just travel.
Travel and education, right? Okay.
That'll be adjusted for everybody, but,
I know.
that was gonna be probably
I
pretty.
didn't want you to forget before today's over.
No, you're okay. Let me find out. We're on community development. Trying to find it in
Okay, you got Amy here to pick on, huh?
Amy, this is Amy, Steve, and Boone are in here. We did request a 20-hour per week employee, part-time employee.
GIS.
For GIS. We'd like to see how that goes. And if there's some specific projects, there might be some grant funding to accommodate that request. Other than that, it's fairly straightforward. Some of the bigger ticket items that are looking forward to would be update of your comprehensive plan at $35,000, and then let's see, purchase of a new GIS data collector. This is basically a GPS unit, which would be like a Trimble. They have the Viewpoint and Orion, which are the softwares that they use. So other than that, it's again fairly straightforward on this one.
Okay, now, it still has here, new vehicle.
Oh no, that's been cut.
Okay, it was still in black, so, okay.
Yeah, we've got that highlighted there.
Okay.
So yeah. No.
And then down at the bottom says used surplus vehicle, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So they had gotten a Ford something from the police department.
They have two vehicles over there that were surplus. They've got the Ford Fusion, and then they have the Crown Victoria,
Crown Vic,
both from the police department,
Right.
that can be used.
With a C, right? With a C.
Yeah, with no seal on it. Yeah.
With no
Miss Cox fall in here too, or no?
Sheila?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
She's a volunteer paid.
She's paid. Yes.
Yeah, I think this one is,
This is just pretty strict administrative.
yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Very good.
Expenses. We good on that one?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I won't, just one, sorry. Does Boone still fall under here or with the police department?
Budgeted right now under community development.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he'd be working through them, though, right? Scott.
This is the, next item would be the Powell bill.
Right, okay.
This is how we basically utilize the funding that we do receive from the state to maintain town-owned roads. So as you can see, there's some recommendations in here for the $50,000 for sidewalk projects. It was noted that JHBAT's being one of the options, but again, we need to go to the plan and implement that, and those funds to be utilized here in Central Business District. And then 90,000 in the maintenance and repair. That's the bulk of that money where that goes. And then general supplies.
Okay. Have you heard anything else from DOT releasing money for, releasing our money that we have for Roland Avenue?
Yeah, that's on hold.
Still on
because
hold.
of the COVID issue. All projects, if they were not physically under construction, they were put on hold.
Tell them we'll find some PPE to put on that money to transfer it from Raleigh to,
there you go.
so it won't get the virus coming out.
Yeah, that's not one we want to see delayed, but unfortunately, that'll have to wait, unfortunately. So moving into sanitation, this is your garbage and recycling, your large item pickup, and this debris, legislative debris gets put into here. So as noted, we didn't see a major increase in these funds. So we'll continue on. Try to make improvements there, especially with communication and citizens. That always seems to be a question. So hurricane, skipping over skipping over the Parks and Rec because we had already gone over that. Hurricane, I guess we don't technically budget any money in here. For anticipatory expenses, we deal with that out of our general fund. As a reminder, this is why we maintain a healthy general fund, is for the unexpected expenses that hopefully we'll be able to defer another year. Welcome Center we've done, recreation tourism we've done, administration. Okay, so getting into your enterprise funds, water and sewer. This gets into your salaries that come out of this. This is your utilities director, your deputy utilities director, half of your utility billing clerk, because she does work in utilities. And then we've got the other half of our fine friend Jason over here in the water and sewer fund with his work in dealing with the utility. So again, this one's pretty straightforward on the admin side of it. Again, we'll go back to travel and training that's built into here. Other than that, that's again fairly straightforward. Including the next item, which is the insurance. Not a whole lot we can do with that. All right, so getting into the water department side, this is your treatment. This does not include collections and distribution, so this is strictly the cost to maintain water for the town. So again, this is fairly straightforward. Again, the increases in supplies and other things are a direct result into the increased costs of essentially doing business. Bless you. So producing that clean water for consumption.
I have got a question. water and sewer. Under, let's see, I believe it's bank fees. All right, last year was 4,000, or this year, 4,000 actual, 16,000. Now, what is that about?
Those are the fees that we're charged for all of our different checking/savings accounts. Credit card fees, merchant fees.
Okay, so is 2,000 gonna be enough this year for it?
You're in the water department?
Yeah, I'm in the water
Hold on, let me
and
look
sewer
up.
fund.
Water. Or you're probably in the admin.
I'm sorry.
Admin, yeah, bank
Hold on.
fees at 2,000.
You're in the administration part of the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah, and that is split.
Yeah.
That is split over the general fund and the water and sewer fund. So it's not just that 2,000, it's actually more than that, but it's split over both funds.
Okay, all right.
For bank fees you were talking about?
I don't know. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. The 2,000 in the admin
Well,
side?
I mean, 2,000 I ain't got a problem with. I got a problem with the 16,000.
Okay.
Where are you at for
From
16?
2019. 2019 actual, under administration, water and sewer fund.
Oh, the 2019 actual, actually.
Yeah.
$16,563.
Oh, yeah, so that one was inflated. They had an iTron software upgrade that they did not budget for, that was charged to that line item, and that's
That was
why
charged to bank.
that's why that's inflated.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So
I
there was a
wondering if
cost.
we were paying the bank that.
No.
No.
Okay, all right.
No.
That was my problem.
We are probably paying them a pretty good amount in
Yeah.
merchant fees, though.
Yes,
Okay,
we
all
do.
right.
We pay them a
Okay, I got
hefty
you.
amount in merchant fees.
All right. Good enough, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to run you backwards.
No,
No,
it's
no,
fine. It's a
you're
good
okay.
question.
I
Yeah.
had that in mind from when I was going through it before, and I just had forgot to
Yep.
mention it to them.
It's all good.
Okay,
So, losing sleep over the stuff.
all right. So now where I've done lost my place now, where are we now?
Utilities director, deputy director, half of the billing clerk, which is Jeannie, and then half of Jason. And then the other half of Jason comes from just the admin.
Okay,
All right, C and D, or collections and distribution. This is the,
What page are you on?
I have moved on to 19 of 23.
Okay, thanks.
So this is responsibilities for pushing water out and bringing sewer back in. All the pipes along the roads and pump stations and everything else that goes along with that. These are certainly the boots on the ground that are doing the repairs and running water lines, etc. So. So this is some of the stuff I think in years past we've seen capital outlay being put in here and then changing that out into the capital improvement budget. So if there's a reduction in there, it's not because we're cutting items. Only true cuts are being shown in highlights. Those are being transferred into the actual projects that are being worked on. So. And Price did offer up if I need to call him for anything, just let me know, and I'm sure he can be over here in a jiffy.
now we're talking about education, these departments, are we seeing that we're getting training in these departments so that we've got a backup for, you know, the water works, the sewer works?
Yeah.
Somebody is there that has the certification to be able to do that?
Absolutely. So that's Price is laying out how that process will work moving forward with his specific distribution tech positions.
Right.
So we'll see a path now get created that C&D, as well as water treatment plant, and wastewater treatment plant, to make sure that there's somebody in line,
that can step in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Wastewater treatment plant. This one again is in regards to operations, fairly straightforward in regards to budgeting. The big thing here is Steve had put in capital outlay facilities, a very large number, to try to cover the capital improvement projects that are currently being worked on. So that's where we took that back out and put that into, and we'll put those into capital improvement budgets. The $97,000 that was currently budgeted in, that comes for with pump repair, things that they have to bring in specialized contractors to come and do.
Okay. How many salaries is who?
I believe there's 4 out there, and that's Steve is a supervisor, wastewater treatment plant operator, and then 2 under that.
Okay.
And they're covering quite a bit of ground too at Sarge Martin and then out at Juniper Swamp. So, again, doing a good job over there. And then that's for the general departmental stuff. That's it. We get into the items that we've kind of gone over with in regards to the capital projects, and so if there's anything else, let us know. I think we've got a couple of good marching orders here. I was glad that we were able to bring in department heads as needed. And I think for next year, looking ahead, we'll go ahead and as soon as Ashley and I make our manager's recommendation, we'll schedule time for them to come in for 15 or 20 minutes to be able to answer some of the specific questions. Because as you can see, it's helpful not only for y'all, it's helpful for us too. I mean, we do go over these things, but that's every department, every single line item. So,
Can you go over the meeting? You have a meeting this week with the Corps, or?
Yeah, if we're ready to move on outside of the budget, I'll be happy. There's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. One was the federal project funding, and then the sidewalk dining option that I just, again, I had sent that out, but just wanted to get a general consensus before I directed staff to get too knee-deep into it.
Right.
Yeah, my response to you was absolutely. Any relief we could provide to these businesses
I think
within the realm of possible and within our purview, then I would move to help them as much.
So the general statute only talks about allowing this option within the DOT right-of-way. So what we would do as a locality is allow it in town right-of-way in case they're on town streets.
Right.
And then we do need to be cautious about parking areas.
But I think we do need to look at allowing them to use some of their parking for dining area. Especially for a length of time, because I'll be fair, I mean, the way I look at it, I'll be a lot more willing to go sit outside and eat than I will to go into the restaurant and eat.
But we also gotta look at, we don't get too far in the right of way where we interfere with emergency services.
No, well, no, I mean, they're not talking about that, but they're just, yeah, I mean, the state is looking at it, and there's a lot of places that are closing, even closing some downtown streets, you know, and allowing dining
Wilmington's
there.
doing that.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell you, our restaurants have been hurting. We need to try to look out for them a little bit. And, you know, people are wanting to get out. And with us opening our rentals up, we're gonna have a lot more people here. And, you know, a lot of places do more outdoor dining than we've ever done here. I don't know why, but it's just not big here like it is in some places.
We'll look at it and bring something back. Just off the top of my head, I think we could probably put a percentage threshold of, you know, what their required parking is. Because again, we don't want unintended consequences. with
Right,
some
in
of
other
this
words, they
stuff.
can't use all their parking, but they can
Yeah.
use a couple of spaces or something,
Absolutely.
you know, for dining.
Okay, well, very good. We'll sort of, I guess, get into the beach nourishment project, the federal project. We did have a meeting yesterday afternoon with Pam and some of the accountants from the Army Corps. And ultimately, we'll have two options, and I foresee us only being able to pursue one of those two, which is the 30-year payback. The benefit of that is that there's no penalty for paying principal ahead of schedule, ahead of that amortized payment schedule. But the longer we delay payment on all this stuff, we accrue interest, and then there's a compounding interest that gets put into it. And this starts at when they begin construction. So the thing that I foresee us having to work out with North Topsail Beach, and their interim manager has already reached out to me, is that we're going to need to get back together with them and have an understanding.
Do we have an understanding yet that, do we have to go the same direction that they have to? In other words, if they say, well, we can't pay any up front, but we're going to do it over a 30-year, do we have to do the same thing?
Yes, and that's where I think that we're going to have to get into some contractual agreements with them to say if we have make a decision to automatically put $5 million into it, then how does that equally distribute the interest? Because we shouldn't be liable for the interest on $5 million of that premium that we have put down, because then we've reduced their overall liability by us doing that.
So they're automatic, but now I tell you, this might run into a problem with our state portion of it. Because see, you know, you were with us when we talked about financing the state portion, and the state doesn't like to make agreements on that because they can't bind the next year's Senate. They can't bind on paying those payments. So how's that gonna work?
Yeah, I'm not sure. And they're starting to reach out to us. And,
I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah, so.
In other words, the state is not gonna do a 30-year finance on their portion.
No. We'd hopefully be looking for an appropriation for it, and not just a finance. But again, you and I had initiated that, or reinitiated that discussion with Representative Smith.
Right.
A few months ago. I don't think we'll see anything out of them until they go back to a long session.
Or until we get out of the COVID.
You know, evaluate what the overall impact is,
Yeah.
because, you know, DOT is hamstrung at this point too. So there's gonna be a lot of revenue shortfalls at the state level as well. So I don't have any answers for council today. They didn't provide us enough information for us to make a decision. But I can assure you that they're gonna wanna see this entire project having one single agreement, and that comes through that PPA, so that there's gonna have to be some secondary agreements, just on the periphery of what I think, between us and North Topsail Beach as to how this is truly going to be paid off. Because if we're gonna be stewards of the taxpayer dollar, we're gonna wanna try to do everything we possibly can to pay that premium down.
That's right.
And not prolong it, because every 5 years, the interest rate is subject to change. So we're in a good point in 2020 at 2.25%, but if we get to 2025 and that goes up to 3%, or 3.5%, or 5 or 6,
Yeah.
you know, that adds tens of millions of dollars onto this project.
Yeah.
So it's be a very difficult thing that we'll have to really put our heads down and try to figure this out, and work with the attorney as sort of the mediator between the two towns to figure out some sort of payment schedule. But at this point, we don't even know what the full liability is. They have not figured out what the budget is. We hopefully will hear that soon. That'll be an element of the PPA, and that PPA is their critical path element that they're working on right now. So, not a whole lot more detail beyond that. Ashley, if you had anything to add, you know, they kind of sent us some examples. It wasn't our project that the numbers we were looking at, and you know, they won't get bids back, but they said that bids they felt were going to be a little higher because of the demand, and so again, it's.
Did you tell me, I can't remember if it was you, that we'll have to pay for our, any property that we.
Yes.
Up
So that doesn't go against.
Yeah, so.
And so we have to
That's
have that in
completely different than what
place.
they told us before,
I'm
right?
glad that I'm not the one who felt that was something they told us, because I'm confident that.
I know they did,
That's
yeah.
right.
They told us not to do land acquisition until after the PPA was signed because it would be considered a credit. But as of yesterday's conversation.
That's gonna have to be procured and before PPA is even signed.
But they said that then when we did, that it would still be credited to our,
And I'll follow back up with Pam on it, because that's, again, I'm glad my craziness is validated, that, you know, from day one,
yeah,
we said, okay, well, we know that this is an expense we're gonna have to incur, and we're not technically being reimbursed, it will be credited to our liability on it.
yeah.
And she said, no, the easements will be something that gets credited back, but not the parking and access portion of it. So I wasn't gonna argue with her on the phone, but I'll reach back out to her and.
Okay.
So if we had to put an estimated dollar amount on the easement and accesses for parking, is that dollar amount in the budget that we were presented?
No, we don't know what that is.
Right.
You know, we have a good idea of properties that we'll have to purchase and then improve. You know, that's going to be what, 15,000 each for those properties for improvement in regards to parking, and then the actual cost of buying the land, and then the easements. I don't know what that number is going to be.
The parking lot, he had estimated at 15,000 piece, and accesses that will need to require him actually don't have to be constructed, improved, they can be natural footpaths as long as they're delineated.
Right, because they really don't suggest improving those until after the project.
And that'd be a decision we can make down the road, but
So where's that money gonna come from?
it'll come from our beach nourishment fund. So
That's why our
that's,
FEMA reimbursement is so critical.
That we're,
absolutely.
when are we gonna get it this year?
We won't know, we don't know.
yeah, so what's
It's still sitting in the portal. It hasn't moved. When I asked the last time with David Gale, He was gonna check with his supervisors because he had not heard anything, any movement on that project, and it still says that it's sitting with the CRC. And that's pretty much all that we know. So there's no telling when we'll get it. I mean, I hope to goodness it's not anything like Matthew money and, you know, they take years to get that to you. But
we
that's-
can't move forward with signing a PPA knowing that we might not have the money. We're gonna sign an agreement and we don't have the funds to pay for it.
Well, the funds that we would need would be for the property acquisitions and the easements. We need to find out what those costs are and compare that to what we have in the account for our beach nourishment account. Because outside of that, our obligation for payment
So,
would be.
worst case scenario, where are we gonna find that money at? If we don't get the FEMA money.
You don't have that money tree in your backyard? I thought you did.
Beach nourishment fund right now.
No, after everything with the sand haul, if you're not including any FEMA reimbursements, it's between $2 and $3 million.
Between how much?
$2 and $3 million.
Well, that's, should be enough to
That would be
buy.
enough to cover what we've got to cover.
Huh?
That would be enough to cover our upfront costs for land acquisition and for parking.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And then what I was talking about the other day is if or when we get the FEMA reimbursement and we, you know, what's our smart financial decision, you know, applying a percentage of that towards the principal. Because
Pay it
everything
up
we
front.
can pay off, we're gonna save.
If we can.
Yeah, if we can.
With no prepayment penalty.
May not be able to
No
pay
prepayment
that because they
penalty.
won't be,
Right.
probably won't be able to.
But I think Kyle's right in making sure that we coordinate some sort of contract or whatever the case may be to make sure that the town is covered, because God forbid one of us can't make a payment. We are duly responsible for that liability, so if one can't make it, then the other's responsible for it.
Is that right?
And you use one contract even though we're two entities.
Wonder who that would be.
Yeah.
Maybe we can move into closed session.
Well, before we do that, I got a couple questions, just administrative. As far as the parks are concerned, they're open, right?
Yes,
Does that include?
but not the playground.
Not the playground,
Not the
but
shelters.
that's what I was gonna ask. The pavilions also?
No, we have not opened the pavilions.
Is there any reason why?
For the 10-person limit.
I mean, 10-person limit at a
Yeah.
pavilion?
Yeah, I mean, we can add that in if that's what.
I'm asking, because I've been asked, and outdoors
Yeah.
good, and, you know, some people are saying, do a pickup at a restaurant, take it somewhere, and some of them want to go to the pavilion and eat.
We
But
can make that happen.
that's just a question, would you be opposed, anyone? to
I
that?
wouldn't be, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Just
It's
put some
outdoors,
signs,
it's-
just have to put some signs up, a maximum of,
Yeah,
10 people.
that was just one question. The other one is, and I think this may have been brought to your attention, Teresa, when I spoke to Cody about, there's some pylons, I guess, that are now.
He's already working
Oh,
on
you
that.
are?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I didn't know that, so that's good.
He's gonna get proposed.
And then I
proposed
just,
for that.
Chad's gone, but I'll give him a call. This question was for him. I'll give him a call next. And then the last thing, and I hate to revisit this, but I'd ask for your patience. As you know, I spoke to Stephanie, Kyle, it's been maybe 3 weeks to a month about the decision on the fireworks. And initially, I reached out after getting, I thought, some positive potential feedback from the town manager. I talked to Doug, I talked to Teresa. It seemed like a good idea that we would pursue it. And the only reason I did that was I thought we needed some hope, some aspiration for the community to look forward to doing something. And I looked at it as a COVID wins over the citizens, you know. And then it went around, and I don't know how it came back to a no consensus from the council, but the intent was, and this wasn't Dwight Torres resident, Dwight Torres council member, Dwight Torres wanted to do it on his own, because in fact I went back, as all of this was being discussed, I went to the Rotary Club of Surf City and said, maybe this is something you want to take on as a club, as a fundraiser, to take the financial piece and risk off to the town. And then also, I said we would still adhere to the governor's request if at that point we were still under the condition where the governor says no mass gatherings, we would say, you know, it was a risk that we took through a fundraiser, And then we had worked with the vendor, and the vendor was willing to allow us to move it to, let's say, Veterans Day. And at least we did it at some point to celebrate, you know, Independence Day, no matter what day it was. And it was, I thought, an opportunity for the town to have something to look forward to. So I just wanted to bring that up again. I don't know if you guys, if that's how you received the information, but that was the intent. It was never intended to go against the governor's wishes and his order, but it was to at least be in a position in which, if it weren't that restricted at that time, that we would be in a position to go ahead and celebrate and give the community something where we've been so restrictive over this time to have an opportunity to celebrate our independence, whether it was on 4th of July or Veterans Day, which I thought would be the more appropriate move if we had to move it. So I just would ask if you can give me why that would not be an acceptable reason to pursue it.
Well, I know it's not going to be, I'm pretty sure, I mean, there's not going to be any gatherings July the 4th. Of course, some places are already canceling Labor Day.
Mass gatherings, which are considered more than how many people?
250, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know exactly at what point that you're going to be able to have 2,000 or 3,000 people gathered. Does anybody have any idea?
That's the point. We don't.
We don't.
But the point was to be in a position that if we could, we would.
And I when you called me that morning, I said, I was basically okay with it. If Kyle and the attorney felt that we should, be on the same page. And the longer I thought about that day and had talked to several others, it came to, we can do it. The town of Surf City should do it. We should do it. We have it in our budget to do it.
Right.
We shouldn't put it off on anyone else in the community to do
Well, the only reason
such a large event, because the reason the town was told no, that we couldn't do it at a later time, was because that the police department could not take care of us. Manpower could not take care of us.
How is it if they've always been able to do it before?
I don't
What's
know.
changed?
I don't know.
Well, the only thing with that was combining it with the Bridge Jam event. So that was, and just going back to the discussion, I'm not saying can or can't, but that was what sparked the reaction of the cannot was the full day of events and activities.
Also, we were also told that manpower is still an issue, even if we moved this to a different day besides Bridge Jam, because we weren't going to get mutual aid. Because most departments were going to send mutual aid over during this time, because there's a stress on that. So if we had more officers, that may have been a solution right away. So
You ain't gonna have enough officers. You can't hire enough officers for what we get support from the fire departments, the police departments like Burgall, the sheriff's department, Holly Ridge. There's no way for us to hire that many personnel. If we did, we bankrupt the budget because there's no way to do it. We rely, the police department, the fire department, and everybody, we rely on a combination of fire department, police department, sheriff's department sending personnel, Holly Ridge sending personnel, North Topsail sending personnel to cover this event. This town cannot afford, or do we need that many personnel on an everyday budget, everyday circumstance to cover one or two events? The town don't need that many police officers, because we're talking personnel from other departments. We're talking probably 4 from the county.
Well, Don, we're just saying that we were told that they couldn't handle the project.
Right. Personally, with the people we got now,
Well,
or
we just
if we hired 1 or 2 more, we still couldn't handle this event and the bridge at the same time.
Well, the bridge is not happening, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not
I'm just saying, we can move it to any other day.
Any other day, and I'll guarantee you, we can cover it.
Yeah, but it should be a town event. The town
I
has
agree.
the money to pay for it. I would be.
I was just trying to take the
Whatever.
fiscal piece off the risk, if that was the risk. That was the only, it was just an idea. So if we were concerned about the money, we'd cover the money, you know, as a community. I have no doubt that we were, you know, we had discussed it, we had already raised, or had a proposal of 2,000, just talking to a few people.
Veterans Day would be awesome.
Well, if we can get a contract where we don't have to pay 40 if we can't have it, then
I think we can negotiate,
I'd go with that. But
you know? But just to give up, it was a little
We wouldn't be
heartbreaking.
the only ones giving up. I don't disagree with it. We'd like to do something to celebrate freedoms and all that. But I don't know of any other town, I don't know of any other municipality, I don't know, even Camp Virginia, cancel their fireworks.
Yeah.
And they're right foremost in front in freedom and separate and doing all that. I think we're trying to get ahead of ourselves, what we need to do, and I think the governor's going to announce something today, I believe.
no,
It's not
it'll
today?
be next week.
Okay.
And he's not even giving a hint. I just
I'll
talked
talk
to
to
him
you
this
later.
morning.
But let him he's gonna relax on these things. If he gets to the point he can relax it, then we can revisit this as a council and see if we can move it to another day, that we can get all the moving parts together.
no,
Because there's a lot of moving parts that has to come together to do it.
Yeah.
And I agree with Teresa, it's a town event, always has been and always should stay a town event.
Yeah. Wasn't trying to take anything from the
Well,
town.
I understand.
You know, just to be
You were
clear.
you were trying to get it done, and I
Yeah.
I applaud that. But I think, with the state guidelines they've got now and what they've got in place, until they relax those, we need to wait and see what they're gonna do, because we can still do something. We've got from now until, November the 7th?
Yeah, right around that, yeah.
So we can still do something with that, but I'm not in agreement with trying to do it the 4th of July.
Well, we won't be able to do it.
I mean, if we can, I just wanted to be in a position
Right.
to try.
But, I think check with them again and see if we can get a contract like you're talking about. Then, you know, that we can use it any way we want to,
Yeah.
then,
I can talk with Tony and see what he'll do. We can sign a new contract if y'all want to do Veterans Day. We can sign a contract for Veterans Day, but it's just going to be 60 days before Veterans Day. I'm going to need to tell him yes or no, so that we
Well,
can get our money.
That'd be fine.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, no, I mean, he said that, didn't you say that he said that if something happened and we couldn't do it on that date, that we could do it whenever we wanted to?
He said we can move it, yeah.
And, so, I mean, if we get a contract like that, yeah, but if it's what worries me is, talking with him this morning, he has not committed to Fridays yet. They feel like he probably will go to phase 2 Friday. We'll know by probably the first part of this week. But, anyway, but then the problem is phase 3, they are concerned, because as you know, if you listen to national news, North Carolina's counts are going up. Of course, like she said, the reason it is because we're doing a lot more testing.
Yeah.
And so that's raising the numbers. But anyway, they're not sure, you know, they've got a 4 to 6 week window on phase 3, and they're not sure that phase 3 will be in effect in that 6 weeks. So as far as mass gatherings, I don't know when it'll be. And, you know, this one, I don't know how many of this is going to allow for mass gatherings. I'm figuring probably 250, 300, or, you know, not over the 600 that we originally started with. So I don't know, but at least it will get our restaurants and all open. You know, of course, they're encouraging the outside dining too. And the only thing there they don't know too with the restaurants if, when they say 50% dining, they don't know whether you're gonna just be allowed to have 50% of your people. They don't know that the outside dining yet, whether the outside dining will help increase that 50%. What I was looking at, using outside dining, if they could do, 50% inside dining, and then the outside dining would be an add-on to what they could do, was what I was hoping, but I'm not sure. That's not been clarified yet, so I don't know. There's a lot still hadn't been clarified. So anyway, but we're trying.
Well, we was talking to Ashley just for a little bit, but we would have to, for the budgeted funds this year, we have to obligate those funds, because that doesn't just roll over to next year. We don't double up the firework budget. We have to obligate it by September 30. So we have to pay that full contract by September 30, regardless of what the governor's word would be. We can't extend it, even if it's a November date, we can't extend it, and that's from...
Well, what if we do, okay, this year's fireworks will just automatically go into,
Half of it, because half of it's already paid.
where is it paid?
It paid to the fire, we paid it every January, we paid for July. Half of it. So the deposit is half of the fireworks show.
You paid it to the fireworks people? And so we've already lost that half?
Zambelli, no, you didn't lose it. It's our deposit for 2021. So in January of 2020, we wrote a check for the deposit for July 3rd, 2020. Since we're not doing July 3rd, 2020, he took that money, since we didn't lose any of it, and he applied it to our event for 2021.
Right, okay, all right, so we've already paid for half of next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, but the other half that's still in our budget will just roll over into,
It'll go to the
capital fine,
They go to the general fund.
yeah, so,
And that's what Ashley was saying, if you don't use those monies, like, what did you say, or September 30th?
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, the fiscal year, you can carry money over after June 30 into the next fiscal year via a purchase order, and that just increases your new budget year's expenditures by that amount. However, the prior fiscal year completely closes out effective September 30th. So in order to have that money, you have to spend it before September 30th or it completely falls out.
but I mean, it's still in town.
Yeah. Yes.
It don't just fall in the ocean.
No, it just, no, thank God for that. No, it just goes out of the budget.
Right. So, I mean, if we could just work a deal with the fireworks people where, say, if we can have a fireworks this year, we will. If not, you carry that money over to 21.
That's kind of how, where we are. If we decide that we could do a fireworks show, he would not just say you can't have that in your deposit. He would just apply that to whatever we want to do, then we would have a balance.
Right.
Tony said that yes, he would do that for us, but as of right now, where we stand, it is currently the deposit for next year.
It's just a deposit.
Yes, but it's just a deposit. But
And we could use that for Veterans
deposit.
Day.
Yeah, I mean, we could use that deposit for Veterans Day, for the Christmas tree lighting, for Santa comes to town. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Right,
It's still
okay.
our
All right,
deposit.
so we'll do
That's
that.
fine.
How about that?
Are we done with fireworks?
Yes, sir.
So we're gonna make it happen for Veterans Day, is that correct?
We're gonna try to.
Okay.
Or Labor Day, or, whatever, at whatever point we can have it.
Okay.
I wouldn't announce it because you don't want to disappoint him.
No, absolutely
If it
not.
happens and it's a surprise.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd bring it up.
Now, how far ahead do you,
60
okay,
days notice, because they've got to get their stuff set up and get here.
Right.
Zambelli's, or I'd probably say 90 days notice. I can check and see. Then you got to get a permit with the county, and then days at least for turnover.
Okay.
That's fine.
We'll have a Halloween bash.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I
Okay.
want to bring it back to the beach conversion.
Yes.
I think what you said about working with North Tops was going to be very important. Because I think it's my understanding that they're looking for the funds to come from the Corps of Engineers to do all of their stuff and pay all their stuff. I don't know that they have the funds set aside to do any of that. They may
Okay.
have.
Have we got now we need to do, when are we going into closed session?
Whenever we want.
Whenever you make a motion.
But I think that's important to do. And one thing I would like to find, I know you can't do it today, but our next meeting, I would like to have a rundown, an update on where we are with our easements, where we are with the property that we need to buy, we have deadlines we need to meet, and we need to be ready to do that. For us to stay on course with this project that's going on with the Corps of Engineers, because we've got to have all this stuff in place, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I could very easily be mistaken, we said that all our stuff, as far as the easements and stuff, is going to be done in June, by June 1st, it'll be finished. Best of my recollection. I could be wrong on that.
It needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this, there's a lot of moving pieces.
Yes.
But we can't say we've got the letters out there or not got them out there and wind up getting down here and we've got 3 or 4 people we got to go see.
Sure.
Because that delays that process.
Sure.
And the Corps of Engineers have been very plain to us, if we're not ready, boom, it goes away.
Yep.
So
And we don't want to be not ready.
Correct.
So
So we need to get on the lawyer and get him this done.
I would like to, until we get to the Corps of Engineers project, every meeting we have, I would like an update on all that. Where we are, how many we've got left, who has it, and all that. So we are abreast of it and ahead of it.
Sure. Well, the pieces from our part will have to go to closed session because it is property acquisition, and I'll let the attorney know that he needs to submit a written report on the easement. Because that is solely within his realm.
Right.
And he's now obligated for 2 towns to have those completed.
Teresa, you taking us into closed session? You gonna make the motion?
You had it right there on the paper.
All right, I recommend that I make a motion to go into closed session. General statute 143-318.11, parentheses A, parentheses 5.
And that's specifically for property acquisition.
Right.
Right.
Do you have a second, Chris? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, Jason, Garrison. Okay, now we're back in regular session. Do we have anything else that needs to come before the board? If not, everybody's quiet.
Motion, we adjourn.
Do I have a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
Second, okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, thank you.